This session.
Oh, thank you. We were especially nervous.
Okay, so the screen light will be on, mic is on.
Got it.
So that's how you know. So if you wanna, you can either move it closer to you, but if you like practice talking.
So good morning, Chair and Commissioners. Thank you for having us today.
Yeah, you're gonna do the side to side buttons.
Oh, side to side.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. And then I'll turn it over to Cassidy.
Hi, is this thing on? Yeah. Hi, thanks, Kate, for the introduction, blah, blah, blah. Isn't it wonderful? Okay.
Yeah.
Great.
Okay.
That looks like it worked.
Easy
Thank
enough.
you.
Thank you very much.
Appreciate you guys doing that
Yeah.
for us.
Some of our mics have red instead of green, and everybody thought that meant they were off.
Yeah. Yeah.
So,
Just meant Christmas came early.
yeah, so I went and changed them all because
You
it
would
was
think
just
that.
confusing. I would think
Yeah.
red meant off too.
Test. Yeah, this one you gotta get kind of a little closer to, so I'm gonna just move it.
Okay, welcome to the Deschutes County Board of Commissioners meeting. This is 9 a.m. Wednesday, November 29th, 2023. First item on the agenda is Pledge of Allegiance. Please join me.
Pledge allegiance to the flag, United States of America, and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Next item on the agenda is citizen input for any item that is not on the agenda. Is there any citizen input? Anybody remote with a raised hand feature? Okay, seeing none, we'll move to consent agenda. And right before the meeting, we're just confirming. So November 1st minutes, we can pull those for review. I hadn't just looked at those.
So I move consent agenda with the exception of November 1st minutes to come back at our next meeting.
Second. And then also just for my fellow commissioners' understanding, I was able to listen to the October 30th meeting about the burn. So in fact, it worked really well. I put it on, I think it was a YouTube stream in my car, hands-free, going down to Eugene, and it kept going the whole time, all the way through the pass and everything. So I don't know how it buffered because there's spots where the internet goes off, but
Great. That was extremely important information.
yes. Okay, any other discussion? Seeing none, Commissioner Adair,
Yes.
Commissioner Chang,
Yes.
and Chair votes yes. Item number 7, public hearing, consideration of a resolution adopting a supplemental budget, reducing beginning working capital and appropriations. So this is Deschutes County budget proper. We're going to do 3 of these this morning.
Morning, Commissioner. Dan Emerson, Budget and Financial Planning Manager. As CFO Robert Tentel talked about on the financial budget reports, budget to actual reports, this is an adjustment. We're adjusting beginning working capital carryover funds for each fund to true up with the actual amount that they carried over. This is a pretty common best practice that counties and cities use across the country. And it also ensures that that the budgeted expenditures are equal to the actual revenue that have come in. Because the danger is if beginning working capital comes in, if beginning working capital comes in lower than expected, then the budget is no longer balanced, but funds still have the budget appropriation and authority to spend up to that current level. So when we do the true up, we reduce the expenditures.
So these are, would you say these are the audited numbers from the fiscal year then? That is that the kind of the starting point? Now we have truer numbers.
Correct. These are the actual, as opposed to the budgeted beginning working capital, these are the audited actual beginning working capital numbers that are true.
And
if there's any questions about any of these adjustments, I'm happy to.
yeah. And then also the known tax roll, published tax roll too, that we don't know specifically at budget time.
One, okay,
There's some recognition of additional tax funds. You know, we try to budget conservatively on our tax assumption, that's value growth. I mean, we are lucky to have a 5.6%, I think, actual tax assessed value growth, and I think we budgeted a 4.9.
Yeah. So the true numbers are more in focus at this point in time.
Right.
Commissioner Dare.
no, that's fine.
So this is a public hearing on the matter. So I'll open a public hearing on a resolution adopting supplemental budget and reducing FY24 beginning working capital and appropriations. Is there anyone to speak on this matter? Is there anyone remotely with a raised hand feature? So at this time, we'll close the public hearing on this matter. Discussion or proposal?
I'm comfortable with this resolution.
Dan, I just wondered if you could explain why we've got ARPA in 2 sections, section 1, and then in section 3 for another almost 2.5 million. It's 14 million in the first section.
So the first section, so ARPA is from an accounting perspective, it's a little bit different than a lot of our budgeting. And so because they're federal grant dollars from an accounting perspective, they haven't been earned, even though we've received those for the last couple of years. So we budgeted them as beginning working capital carryover, but it's kind of a technical accounting thing. We need to put that carryover instead of the beginning working capital line. We need to put it in the federal grants line. And so that adjustment is in one part, it's making that adjustment, moving that 14 million over into the federal grants line. but we actually didn't have 14 million to move over. We only had 11.5. And the reason for that is because the city of Bend came in May, in between when the budget was proposed and the adoption, and this board went ahead and made the $1.5 million managed camp motion, and we paid a lump sum at that point in time in early May. And we had budgeted for that actually to come out of FY24. And then the other is just subrecipients. We have 30 plus capital subrecipients doing reimbursable expenditures, and we were lucky that they're already getting their projects, completed and
Spending the money.
Yeah, spend the money, get it out to the community.
Thank you.
Of course.
Great. Is there a motion?
Move approval of resolution 2023-062, reducing beginning working capital and appropriations within the 2023-24 Deschutes County budget.
A second.
Any other discussion? See none. Commissioner Chang,
Yes.
Commissioner Dare,
Yes.
and chair votes yes. Thank you. Item number 8, we will convene as the governing body of the countywide law enforcement district. Consideration of resolution adopting a supplemental budget, recognizing additional funds, reducing beginning working capital, and decreasing appropriations within the countywide law enforcement district.
This resolution is just truing up basically the sheriff's office. We need to transfer funds from the county rural district and the countywide district into Fund 255 because there was a decrease in beginning working capital in those rural districts. If there's any questions about this one, I'm happy to answer that.
And recognizing additional tax revenue.
And recognizing additional tax revenue, correct?
Yeah. So if I'm tracking correctly, the beginning working capital was estimated too high, and now we're trying to square it up by transferring funds from contingency, plus we've received some additional tax revenue above what was projected.
Right.
I guess my key question on this is about the contingency transfer. This is what the contingency is for, to balance out the budget when they're unanticipated or unpredicted issues like this.
Sure. Yep. Variances on beginning working capital or unexpected expenditures throughout the course of this current fiscal year is exactly what contingency would be utilized for. In case of the sheriff's office, the contingency is also, however, used as a cash flow because they are relying on taxes. So there's 4 months out of the year where they may not have cash on hand. And so that's the reason for the 33% contingency policy. The sheriff's office, was under that, and we were okay with passing that, or it was passed as a budget last year, but they were under the 33% contingency. So,
right. And so, given that explanation of what the contingency is for, both cash flow and meeting unanticipated expenditure needs, and that 33% number, what should our contingencies for these two taxing districts be?
I mean, our policy is 33%, and I would have to look at it. I believe it's significantly under that contingency level right now. I think the contingency level is around, I would honestly have to look at it, but I think it's around $9 million right now is where they're actually at. And I believe they need to be somewhere closer to 17 to be at that policy for cash flow purposes. Okay.
So is this a public hearing on the matter? It's not listed as a public hearing.
Is
This is not a public hearing.
no,
This is not. Okay, so
it's a different governing board. Sorry.
okay, so as I say, so this is just consideration of this resolution down in these dollars with known numbers. Just in following on, we do have a mid-year budget discussion coming up, and we can sure kind of look at that big picture and what the sheriff's office could do for making sure those contingencies are appropriate, or the policies or the thoughts of that department are fully understood by the budget committee.
I guess one more question about the contingency. When we were talking about the courthouse project, reserves and adequate contingency funds, I believe are pretty important to the financing of a capital project like that. As you know, we are in early conversations with the sheriff's office about a major
Public safety campus.
renovation. Yeah. The various pieces of the public safety campus, capital work. How would being well below contingency, policy contingency levels affect our ability to finance such projects?
Well, I think the finance department is working in tandem with the sheriff's office right now, looking to see what financing options might be available. It's still a little bit early for that, but certainly any type of, as we just went out for the courthouse bond, as you know, Moody's did talk to the importance of capital reserves and contingencies. So that's always a factor when you go out and look at what that kind of true interest cost would be on a bond.
Thank you.
Great, good discussion. Is there a motion?
Move approval of resolution number 2023-063, recognizing additional property tax revenue, reducing beginning working capital and decreasing appropriations within the 23-24 countywide law enforcement district budget.
Second.
It's been moved and seconded. Is there any other discussion?
I would just say that we really need to look in this next budget cycle at how to shore up that contingency fund for the sheriff's office.
Calling for the vote, Commissioner Dare, Commissioner Chang,
Yes.
and Chair votes yes. At this time, we'll convene as the governing body of the Rural Law Enforcement District. This is consideration of resolution adopting supplemental budget, recognizing additional funds, reducing working capital, and decreasing appropriations within Rural Law Enforcement District Fund. So kind of the
This is the rural district, same thing.
So 2006, the voters approved these two permanent rates for the sheriff's office operations, jail operations, and countywide rural law enforcement outside of cities. So this is just the other aspect of it. Any other thoughts or?
So in this case,
Anything?
the contingency is actually increasing.
Yes, so initially in this case, the contingency decreased substantially. And then we reviewed some of the actual allocations. And we did not change any of the allocation method between countywide and rural, but we realized that some of the budget from the sheriff's office was not aligning with the actual accounting allocation methodology. And that was actually into the sheriff's office, into the rural district's favor. And so we aligned the budgeted allocations with the accounting allocations that actually provided about $1.25 million more into the rural. Specifically, I think the patrol had been budgeted 100% to countywide, and it needed to be budgeted. There's a split, an allocation split, and the patrol is also budgeted to rural. And so once we made that change, that brought in an influx.
Great. Is there a motion?
Yes. Move approval of resolution number 2023-064, recognizing additional property tax revenue, reducing beginning working capital, and decreasing appropriations within the 23-24 rural law enforcement district budget.
Second. Any other discussion? Seeing none, Commissioner Dare,
Yes.
Commissioner Chang.
Yes.
And Chair will vote yes. Thank you very much. At this time, we are reconvening as the governing body of Deschutes County. Item number 10, multiple use property tax exemption application for Jack Straw Development at Southwest Industrial Way. Good morning. Thanks for joining us. So go ahead and just, introduce the topic for us, and we do have the backup for it.
Good morning, Chair and Commissioners. Thank you for having us today. My name is Kate Schneider. I'm a Senior Management Analyst at the City of Bend, and I'm here today to present a multiple unit property tax exemption application for a project located at 310 and 350 Southwest Industrial Way. And with me today is Cassidy Bollinger from representing the applicants. and he will tell you a little bit more about the project itself. But before I turn it over to Cassidy, I wanted to just walk you through how the project meets the program requirements.
Is there anybody online? Is that what we're looking for? Oh, the presentation. Got it. I knew there was something coming here. Okay, there we go.
All right. Proposing a seven-story building with 313 residential units. As I mentioned, this project meets the program requirements. So as I know you're familiar, the MUPTE program was adopted by the Bend City Council in August of 2022. It is meant to spur development and redevelopment in the city's core and transit-oriented areas. The program is available to projects located in certain eligible areas that provide at least 3 defined public benefits and meet the program requirements. So highlighted here is how this project meets the program criteria for MUPTE. It's a 7-story mixed-use development with 313 new residential units. It's located in the core area TIF district or tax increment finance district. They took steps to mitigate impacts to prior uses. Spoken Moto and an existing shed were both relocated and repurposed. The project is providing 3 defined public benefits. Priority public benefit is the high standard of energy efficiency through Platinum. And then it's also providing mobility supportive amenities and a wrapped parking structure. As you may remember, the city also contracts with an independent third-party financial consultant to review the project performance and confirm that it would not be financially viable without MUPTE.
Can you explain wrapped parking structure? Is that not visible structure or what? Yeah, what's the concept?
The concept, and Cassidy will talk more about this, but
Yeah, okay.
Retail and residential uses provided on the street level. And I think Cassidy has a rendering of it.
Okay, so parking structure with other uses.
Yeah, you
Around the
don't see
outside.
parking. Walking down the street, you don't feel like you're up against it.
Yeah.
So as I mentioned, this project was reviewed by a third-party financial consultant, Pacific Northwest Economics. That consultant found that the project would not be financially feasible without MUPTE, that its income would not provide operating expenses, the return on investment of only 4.4%. The project approaches financial feasibility with MUPTE, but even then it can be considered financially challenged. I want to speak just briefly to the financial impacts and estimated exemption. So as I noted earlier, the project is located in the core area tax increment finance district. So the financial impact of this property tax exemption is only to the Bend Urban Renewal TIF fund. There are no direct financial impacts to the county because it's in the TIF district. And then as you see before you, these are the estimated, what the estimated exemption would look like if the project is approved. So we estimate it would receive about $10.6 million in an exemption worth $10.6 million, and that the project would still pay $1.1 million in property tax collection over that 10-year period. And if the project were to not happen, that site would be expected to generate about $400,000 in property tax revenue over that same 10-year period. With that, I'll turn it over to Cassidy to share a little bit more about the project itself.
Thank you, Kate. And I'll state it again. I'm Cassidy Bolger. I'm with Killian Pacific, the developer for the project. I'll share with you a little more detail, but I'll try to be brief as I know we don't have a lot of time today. Here from this aerial, you can see the site is just to the west of 97, east of the box factory, south of Arizona and north of Industrial Way. Also shown here is the new extension of Northwest Sizemore that we'll be constructing as part of the project on the east or right side of the drawing here. Additionally, you can see the Lava Road Woonerf, which is a pedestrian-oriented multimodal road we are creating as a new and unique urban space in the city. These drawings show the TIF area boundary and the location of the jackstraw in orange. You can see in the aerial view on the left that the site was primarily surface parking and 2 small warehouses. And as Kate said, we worked with Spoken Moto, a coffee shop that was on site, to have them move their building to a new site, and they opened in a new location earlier this year. Here's a 3D rendering view of what the project will look like when it's complete. This is from the west looking east. As Kate said, it includes 313 apartments, over 7 stories. We also have 17,000 square foot of retail at the ground floor, 457 parking spaces for vehicles, and 325 bicycle parking spaces. Our priority benefit, as was mentioned, is a high standard of energy efficiency and green building features, and we're meeting this standard by achieving LEED Platinum certification. We believe we're the first multifamily project in Bend to pursue LEED Platinum, and we're very excited about that. The additional public benefit, we'll have 2 of those, and so the first of our additionals is mobility supportive amenities. And these program requirements are met by exceeding a minimum of 10 secured bike parking spaces on site. We have 325 of them, as well as pedestrian scaled lighting design across the site to make the environment comfortable for pedestrians at all times of the day. We're also providing, as I mentioned, the Woonerf and a plaza along the Lava Road alignment, which is helping us meet the intent of these mobility supportive amenities with a pedestrian friendly environment. The second is wrapped parking structure. Nothing to do with our gift wrapping. It's this diagram kind of shows you this is the plan of the building, and so the white portion is primarily structured parking garage, and then the orange to the left that you see is retail space, and then the green is residential space. So when you're on the public right of way on Lava, which is a public right of way, but whether you're on Lava or Industrial or Sizemore, you don't see, a parking structure or cars. Finally, here's our financial analysis, which does look tiny on the screen, but is very similar to the third-party analysis conducted by the city's consultant, and shows that the project returns are greatly impacted by the MUPD abatement. To state it quite simply, our ability to finish this project depends on the MUPD abatement. And in conclusion, I would like to reiterate that through the TIF, the taxing jurisdictions approved foregoing increased tax revenue for 30 years. You did so in the interest of enhanced investment in the zone, driving stronger growth of tax revenue after 30 years than would have occurred without the TIF. Additional approval of the MUPD abatement serves to enhance this investment by further supporting tax revenue growth during the TIF's duration. This additional investment comes at no cost to the taxing jurisdictions and leads to better returns. We are able to build more units in a more dense fashion than we could without the abatement. This will ultimately lead to a property with a higher valuation that generates higher tax revenue than would be possible without the abatement. Approval of the MUPD for the Jack Straw does not redirect or divert any additional tax revenue to the county or the other taxing jurisdictions. So thank you for taking the time to consider our application today. We are very excited for this project and the future of our continued investment in Bend and Deschutes County, and I'm open to any questions that you might have.
So just the logistics of the approval. So it's already in a tax increment financing district, so there's no changes by making a decision today. And we kind of made a choice just to take a look at these. We asked you to come in and say, oh, well, what's going on in this big area? Because it would be a tax, affect the tax base other than that existing TIF district that's there. So just acknowledging that it's for information today also. So then the proposal is to approve this application. Is maybe, Nick, can you put it in perspective? Is the approval substantive at this point? I guess that's kind of.
Well, certainly it is, because they need a majority of the taxing districts to approve of the multiple unit property tax exemption. And so we're one of those. I think we all know that the school district holds by far the most, over 50% of the taxing districts, but certainly they're interested in our perspective, and often they're coming to the county before they're going to the school district and others. So it's out of respect that they're coming to us first. Larger taxing districts are interested in the Board of County Commissioners perspective. Now, since I have the mic here for just one moment, one of the questions for the board to think about, not necessarily today, but do you want to continue to see these projects that are in the TIF area? Because we've had the board seen a couple now, and you've approved the other one or two to this point, I don't recall. that don't have an impact, but it's still
Mhm.
interesting to see. So one of the questions for the board to think about going forward is, do you want to continue to see all, or would you just like to see those that are outside the TIFT area that would have an impact on the taxing district? So that's a question going forward, but certainly your vote does matter this morning, and your consideration of the application.
Yeah, I'm shedding a little light on this big project. So any other thoughts? or-
I'd just like to thank the applicant and city staff for re-emphasizing for us that within this project within this TIF district does not have a financial impact for the county in the in the period when the MUPD is in effect and the TIF district is in effect. But will, very importantly, result in more assessed value in this location in the long run that benefits all of the taxpayers of Deschutes County by adding to the revenue that we have to provide the key services that we provide. Along those lines, I did want to ask what the duration of the TIF district is, and can you remind me also what the duration of the MUPD is?
Yes, Commissioner, the MUPD program is set to sunset in 2030. So no applications will be accepted after 2030, and I can't remember the exact month. And then the TIF district is a 30-year district that was, I believe, started in 2020. So we're early.
But already 10 years closer to the point where we will, from a revenue perspective, start to see the benefits of this development. Thank you.
Well, thank you for the introduction to the project. As I say, I think we're already seeing cranes out there. Is that correct? So it's pretty exciting. Any other thoughts, or is there a motion?
I mean, I would also just thank the applicant for bringing this innovative project to our community, this mix of needed housing, retail, that the childcare component, I really appreciate it. And what this project will do to increase biking, walking, energy conservation, and other things that are of great value to our community. So with that, I would move approval of the application from Killeen Pacific for a multiple unit property tax exemption relating to property at 310 and 350 Southwest Industrial Way in Bend.
And I'll second it, but I'll just say, are 2 townhomes for childcare really adequate for, let's say, 313 apartments, or people that are actually going to work there? I know maybe 4 would have been better. Anyway, I just know childcare is such a need in our community, and I'm just looking at the comparison of the numbers, and I'm thinking, I know that they're limited on how many children they can take, so just a thought for the future.
Okay, any other discussion? Seeing none, Commissioner Chang,
Yes.
Commissioner Dare,
Yes.
and Chair will vote yes. Thank you very much. And as I say, so congratulations on your project. For the next project, we'll just have that discussion about, do we want to bring it here or not?
Thank you, Chair. Thank you, Commissioner.
Thank you.
On that question, I would just say that I think it's, I appreciate hearing about the projects.
Yeah.
I don't know if we need to be so formal about, bringing you in here to do an approval or not, but it is really, it was really exciting to hear about the project today, see the diagrams and be able to visualize it.
Thank you, Commissioner. We agree.
Thank you.
Yeah, we're waiting to hear how many apartments you actually have gotten done this year. Our treasurer is working on pulling those numbers together. So, but this is going to be 25. It'll be all done.
Yes, third quarter 25.
Third quarter. Okay, September 25. Okay, great.
Okay, item number 11, second reading of ordinance for Stevens Road Tract Plan Amendment and Zone Change. Welcome.
Good morning, Commissioners. For the record, Audrey Stewart, Associate Planner with Community Development. The item before you is the second reading of ordinance 2023-025. This is an ordinance approving a request for a comprehensive plan amendment and zone change. This is for a property located adjacent to the City of Bend's current UGB. This property is referred to as the Stevens Road Tract. I was before you 3 weeks ago for the first reading. There have been no changes to the draft ordinance since then, and I'm here today for the second reading. I'm available if there's any questions or discussion from the board. Otherwise, there's a suggested motion in your packet.
Right, second reading. Is there any questions or is there a motion?
The sooner we get this done, the better, right? I move approval of the second reading of ordinance number 2023-025 by title only.
Second.
Been moved and seconded. Any other discussion? Seeing none, Commissioner Dare,
Yes.
Commissioner Chang,
Yes.
and Chair will vote yes. So this is second reading of ordinance number 2023-025, an ordinance amending Deschutes County Code Title 23, the Deschutes County Comprehensive Plan, to change the comprehensive plan map designation for certain property from rural residential exception area to Bend urban growth boundary, and amending Deschutes County Code Title 18, the Deschutes County zoning map, to change the zone designation from certain property from multiple use agriculture to urbanizable area. So the second part of that is move for adoption.
I'll move adoption of ordinance number 2023-025, amending Deschutes County Code Title 23, the Deschutes County Comprehensive Plan, to change the comprehensive plan map designation for certain property from rural residential exception area to Bend urban growth boundary, and amending County Code Title 18, the Deschutes County zoning map, to change the zone designation for certain property from multiple use agricultural to urbanizable area.
I'll second it.
It's been moved and seconded for the adoption of this ordinance. Any other discussion?
I would just say this is a very exciting project that's going to produce another complete community, and with schools, shopping, or access to schools, shopping, housing, and employment lands, all within a defined area for our community. It's a great example of how the city of Bend should be growing, and very excited to do our small part to move the project forward.
Great. So seeing none else, Commissioner Chang,
Yes.
Commissioner Dare,
Yes.
and Chair will vote yes. There we go. Another project completed
Commissioner.
Or maybe started.
or started. Yes, that's absolutely. Big project started. Item number 12, ordinance amending Deschutes County Code relating to composition of the Historic Landmarks Commission. It gets exciting in the landmarks world.
Good morning, Commissioners. For the record, Tanya Saltzman, Senior Planner. I'm here to present ordinance number 2023-023 to the Board of County Commissioners for consideration of both first and second reading and potential emergency adoption. These are the historic landmark amendments, and a work session was held with the Planning Commission back on October 12th. A work session was then held with the board on October 25th. And then we held the Board of County Commissioners, held a public hearing on November 1st. And just a little bit of background, these amendments are different now than they were for that public hearing. During the public hearing, the amendments that were proposed addressed two things. The big chunk of it was creating a procedure to suspend the Historic Landmarks Commission during certain times upon board order. Because of a low interest in the HLC or low activity in the HLC. And the second part of that was a more clerical housekeeping portion to address the composition of the HLC, which it notes that one member should be from the Deschutes County Pioneer Association. That no longer is a non-for-profit Oregon entity, so it's kind of moot. We had a great public input in that hearing, interest in the HLCs. So subsequently, the board gave staff direction to decouple those parts of the amendments. We have a recruitment underway as we speak. It's been open for a month for the HLC, so that will start going, figuring that out probably starting next week. It closes on Friday.
Do we have applicants?
I checked in with HR. I don't know yet, but I'm pretty sure based on anecdotal communication with me. So we should know it closes on December 1st. So I'll know how many applications we have shortly after that. So probably early next week, and then we'll go on the recruitment process. So that's separate from these amendments. So what's left in the proposal at hand, the ordinance at hand, is simply the amendments considering the Pioneer Association. As I noted, the Pioneer Association no longer exists in the state that it used to exist in. It's been folded into the Deschutes County Historical Association, and it's no longer an official position. So we wanted to strike that from the code because just to eliminate any confusion. And that's what these amendments consist of. Staff has noted that we're proposing emergency adoption, so first and second reading today. I know we don't usually take emergency adoption lightly, but for the purposes of kind of the way the timing slots in, it was best on consultation with legal counsel, and I believe Nick, to just get this kind of complete and clean so that when we do the recruitment, when we begin next week and begin selecting people, there's just no ambiguity about this Pioneer Association position that no longer exists. So it's just to keep things a little bit cleaner. So you have before you that ordinance 2023-023.
Can I just ask, so the Pioneer Association kind of was merged into the DCHA. Does the Historical Association have a designated slot on the?
We do not. Right now, the way the code is, it's membership shall, to the extent possible, be representative of the various geographic areas of the county. Sisters can appoint one commissioner, and that's kind of it.
So I am involved with the Deschutes County Historical Society, and at the on the board are multiple previous members of the Pioneer Association. So right now, membership is represented from the now defunct organization at the table. There's even money in the bank. There was a scholarship fund and some other dollars, Pioneer Queen efforts. So it's fully active under the Historical Society without separate bank accounts anymore. And there's no specific entity. But yeah, so the current membership that want to, remember the good old days, I guess is how you'd think of it as, are involved with the Historical Society.
Yeah, I mean, the reason I asked was, if there was historically a designated spot for somebody from the Pioneer Association, the thought would cross my mind, should we redesignate that spot for a member of the Historical Society? But then on second thought, I mean, we saw how recruitment was a challenge, at least for a period, for this position. So in some ways, just leaving maximum flexibility in terms of recruitment opportunities is probably a better policy than trying to designate seats.
And we do make an effort to, and certainly going forward, more of an effort to include that Historical Society, Deschutes County, as well as Three Sisters, and have them kind of at the table for any sort of project or initiative.
Well, and they're the ones in the room advocating for not making the change that was being proposed. So, I mean, they're out there, they know. Okay, so there was a public hearing on the matter that got us to this point. The proposal is for a first and second reading and adoption by emergency for the alignment of the current recruitment. If there's support, we can have a
Can I
motion.
make that motion?
Yeah.
I move to conduct first and second reading by title only and adoption by emergency of ordinance number 2023-023.
Second.
Can we do all three together like that?
You can.
Okay,
Okay.
great. There we go. So I'll read it twice and then we'll vote for adoption. I guess we're voting the whole thing. So any other discussion? Seeing none, Commissioner Dare,
Yes.
Commissioner Chang,
Yes.
and Chair votes yes. So this will be the first and second reading. So first reading of ordinance number 2023-023 and by title only, an ordinance amending Deschutes County Code Title II, Chapter 28 to remove reference to the Deschutes County Pioneer Association and declaring an emergency. Second reading of ordinance number 2023-023, an ordinance amending Deschutes County Code Title II, Chapter 28 to remove reference to the Deschutes County Pioneer Association and declaring an emergency. And it has been enacted by the previous vote. Here we go. So it's good to have an audience here to hear this. So this is the Historical Society. Tanya, can you just give us the big picture then. Quarterly meetings?
48 hours to apply. So
Well, there you go.
I'm just looking at everyone in this.
But quarterly meetings, inventory of properties.
Historic Landmarks Commission meets quarterly, and it addresses the rural and incorporated county. So the city of Bend has their own, city of Redmond has their own, et cetera. Technically they are a review body. If anybody comes up with an application to modify or demolish a listed historic resource in the county, or to nominate something new, the HLC functions as sort of an advisory and review board for that. They also are the recipient of certified local government funding, which comes from the State Office of Historic Preservation. So lots of potentials for education and outreach and communication. The HLC does not do kind of hands-on actual restoration, but they try to be a connector to those who do and just funnel information back and forth and try to kind of get people engaged and connected with historic preservation. So you have 48 hours to
48 hours to apply.
And just to add, they also have a jurisdiction for historic preservation in the city of Sisters,
Yes.
in addition to the rural county. No, that's okay. I just wanted to make sure that that we had that on the record as well, in part because we heard, at least in writing, from a number of residents in the Greater Sisters area about their interest in preserving the commission as it is. And so if they're watching, they also have the same 48 hours to apply, and we certainly look forward to their applications as well. The final piece is we're beginning to coordinate now, staff is on a joint Board of County Commission, Historic Landmark Commission meeting likely in February in the new year. So it'll be a great opportunity for the two commissions to meet each other and chart the course going forward together.
Okay, thank you so much.
So has that ever been done before?
We did it once many years ago. I think the year we did it, I do recall, was in 2016, our centennial.
Okay.
And that was a really great joint meeting. Excuse me. So that was a great meeting. But I'm not sure if we've done it since then.
in my tenure here.
Okay. Yeah.
So we'll circle back, staff will circle back with the board as the recruitment process continues.
Are we going to send out another press release so that people know that it's 48 hours?
We can.
Get your applications in?
I could request that.
Won't they
Yeah, we
give you
could
a
do social
number?
Media blast. Eric, are you listening?
There you go.
Yeah, I can see what we can do for sure.
Okay, great. Just in case somebody missed it.
Yes, absolutely.
Well, the great thing is our communications director's in the back.
There we go.
Thank you.
Yeah, 48-hour countdown. Thank you so much. Item number 13, resolution adding a new position for information security manager to the IT department. Tanya, look at all the folks that came here to see you today.
They're very interested in it. Hi, for the record, Tanya Mahood, IT Director and CTO at Deschutes County, here to discuss the consideration for adding a full-time employee and increasing appropriations in the IT fund and IT reserve fund. So because I was hired beginning the start of budget kickoff, I didn't request any special requests for that this fiscal year, noting that we may submit one for mid-year. So here I am asking for a mid-year addition for a full-time information security position within Deschutes County. So the evolving landscape of security threats and the increasing need to safeguard our assets, information, and personnel make this addition imperative for ensuring the resilience and integrity of our operations. So it's anticipated that we could fulfill this position in March 1st of 2024. If approved, we expect the cost to be around $64,000 for this fiscal year. The IT department has worked closely with the risk department, and they've committed to contributing $32,000 for the IT department for this position. And I'm requesting $32,000 transfer from the general fund and for this initial year only for this position. Furthermore, the risk department has committed an additional $118,000 for IT for immediate security efforts and risks. So that's it. Do you have any
Great, thank you.
questions?
Is RIS going to continue that
No.
funding?
This is a one-time.
Special, okay.
Mhm.
So this will fold into internal department charges, basically across the organization. That's how this will be funded in the long run.
Yep.
Could you just, I mean, we have seen in the last couple of years, a couple of our our fellow Oregon counties experienced some serious cybersecurity issues and literally county governments being held hostage for ransom. Can you just recount like at the very high level what the security issues were there, and how a position like this might help to address those concerns?
Yeah, definitely. So, it's not if it's going to happen, it's when it's going to happen. We have security risks, and just like every other county has security risks. Unfortunately, with some of those other counties, they didn't have dedicated IT folks that were there that, and they didn't spend the money in the areas that probably they needed to spend the money on. So unfortunately, Curry County is a good example where they were down for almost 3 months without computers, unable to talk, communicate, print, anything. So it is a good reminder that we need to make sure that we keep security on the forefront. And so we're not perfect. We have areas that we need to work on. We have risks that we need to remediate, and we have vulnerabilities. So this position would be designated for, training, being, I've got a good list here of assessing, responding, developing, and monitoring, aligning us to a security framework. Currently, we do not align to anything. So that would really give us the guideline of being able to say, what do we need to do and how do we need to do it and how do we get there? They're going to create protocols and policies, things that we don't currently have that will really help us so that we can help folks, our employees, be able to understand what should they do and what shouldn't they do. And then creating some metrics as well. So where are we and where do we relate to other counties? So giving us some comparables. Yeah, I think this position is imperative. Right now, we don't have anyone dedicated to it, so it's being spread out across other employees. And I think having somebody that's really watching it and looking at it and being able to represent it is important.
I know we've done security audits in the past and education outreach. So, I mean, there's definitely been some efforts,
Yes.
but it's fast moving out there, and you hear about
And growing quicker.
big organizations being just brought to their knees. So it's serious business.
Yep. Yeah.
What about, I think it was a week ago, I had to sign into my phone like every day.
Yep.
And I heard it wasn't just me.
Nope, it was not you. That was
And I was going, okay, could we like get this like calm down to like every 1 week or 2 weeks or something? Yeah, I'm just wondering, is there a problem with that program or is it just so sensitive?
Nope, that was an accident, that somebody accidentally pushed the wrong button and made it 24 hours rather than 14 days. So yep, a little embarrassing, but it is a good reminder that security is not convenient. And we want to make it as secure as possible, but also balancing that. So we don't want it every day. So we did switch that once we realized it. So sorry.
I mean, if that was a day that there was incredible cybersecurity risks, and we had to sign in on repeatedly in order to be safe that day, then that's an acceptable impact.
Yes. Yep.
My one other question on this. So the staff report lays out how we'll pay for the $64,000 for the remainder of this fiscal year. I'm curious what kind of a formula we have for this position in the longer term.
Can you clarify? Sorry, meaning it would be rolled into ISFs for next fiscal year.
I see Dan nodding in the back.
Yep.
Okay, thank you.
ISFs being internal service funds.
Yep.
So that everybody shares in the costs of the services your department provides.
Correct.
Yes.
For all the departments not to be held hostage for 3 months, it's probably a worthwhile investment.
This is a good step in the right direction. Yes, we have more work to do, but I think this is imperative.
So Tanya, is ransom insurance any good at all? I know that it's gotten more and more expensive. I believe we didn't have it until I got here like in 19 and I thought, maybe that helps, but that doesn't even help you, does it?
It does in some ways. So there's definitely a movement towards going away from it. but it's because it's not covering us in the way that we need to. Currently, our cyber insurance is covering us in the way that we need to. And it is also providing services for us, granted additional charge, but it is providing us the what we need in case we do have a cyber incident. We've had to go through this process and they've been very helpful. So right now, I'd say we stay with that. Now, could that change in the future? Yes, I think it just needs to be continuously evaluated. And I'm hoping that this position can help us with that too.
Thanks.
There a motion?
I'll move approval of resolution number 2023-066, increasing appropriations and FTE within the IT fund, the IT reserve fund, and the 2023-24 Deschutes County budget.
I'll second the motion.
Any other discussion? So special thank you to the department. You know, this is a big organization. It's a mature organization, and the tools are very useful and stable. I guess a stable environment. You know, I've been really pleased with you know, how accessible everything is and how everything does keep working. Just got to prepare for that one moment where we could be attacked. So
Yeah, absolutely. I appreciate that. Thank you.
the calling for the vote, Commissioner Chang,
Yes.
Commissioner Dare,
Yes.
and Chair votes yes. Thank you. Item number 14, we're getting to the public hearing on transportation system plan any minute here, but one more. Item number 14, text amendment for an air traffic control tower at the Bend Municipal Airport. Audrey, welcome back.
Good morning, again, Audrey Stewart with Community Development. The item before you is a work session regarding a text amendment for the Bend Airport. The applicant has proposed amendments to 2 chapters of Deschutes County Code. That would be the Airport Development Zone and the Airport Safety Combining Zone. The applicant in this case is the City of Bend, and their request is to add an air traffic control tower as a use that's permitted outright in the Airport Development Zone, and to allow an air traffic control tower to be up to 115 feet in height. The Airport Development Zone applies to the Bend Municipal Airport, and no other airports would be impacted by this amendment. This text amendment is required for the Bend Airport to secure funding from the FAA and also help address safety concerns. To take advantage of this FAA funding, the City of Bend must complete construction of the tower by October of 2025. A public hearing was held before a hearings officer on October 2nd, and one member of the public testified in opposition. That same member of the public submitted several written comments, and they were the only member of the public to provide comments. A hearings officer recommendation was mailed out on November 21st, and they recommended approval of this application. In that recommendation, the hearings officer also provided a thorough response to the issues that were raised in objection. Only the Board of County Commissioners has the authority to modify Deschutes County Code, and therefore the board must take final action on this application. The board may choose to either adopt the hearings officer recommendation, or the board may choose to hold a new public hearing and then issue a decision. If the board decides to adopt the hearings officer recommendation, I'll prepare an adopting ordinance and then return for a first and second reading. If the board decides to hold a new public hearing, I'll coordinate with the board staff to schedule that. Staff recommends the board adopt the hearings officer findings because the proposed code language, which is included in your packet, has been vetted by planning staff, the airport manager, a hearings officer, and the Oregon Department of Aviation. Many of the issues that were raised in objection weren't tied to applicable criteria, and so therefore the board would be kind of limited in how they can address those if the same issues are raised again. I also want to note that airport uses are also heavily regulated by both the FAA and the Oregon Department of Aviation. As I mentioned, this proposed code language was reviewed by the Oregon Department of Aviation, and they didn't have concerns with it. And the FAA has also been coordinated with throughout this, as the tower will be constructed under an FAA program. And with that, staff is available for any questions from the board.
Great. So at this point, we kind of set direction to this. You know, I know this is a very busy airport and safety is the key to this whole thing. Having a tower out there will empower incoming and outgoing flights to have a little bit more information about what's going on. And I don't fly an airplane, but I have been in and out of there once or twice in my career here. Last was with that helicopter. and everybody's just kind of trying to communicate on their radio. So I'm supportive of accepting this. I putting direction to it. Sorry.
This is one of the busiest airports in the state, and I think I understand the mechanics of how having this tower is going to improve safety for that amount of traffic in the air in that area. I one thing I am curious about, and it may be outside the scope of this this land use action, but I would really like to understand whether having this, so we know that this tower is going to make it safer for the traffic that currently exists in that area. I would like to understand whether this tower will actually enable increased traffic in that area, or whether it's, is this for making the traffic that's there safer, or is this also going to enable a lot more planes to be in the air in that vicinity?
So the reason the city submitted this application is they were accepted as a candidate into the FAA's federal contract tower program. And so that looks at a cost benefit analysis. It essentially assigns a dollar value to the safety improvements and increased efficiencies, and then compares that to the cost of operating the control tower. And so when they got a ratio of those two, essentially there was enough benefit for them to qualify for this federal program. Many of the things with airport operations are beyond the scope of our land use review. So things, and that was also discussed in the hearings officer recommendation, that issues raised around, frequency of takeoffs and flight operations were kind of outside of what our land use addresses. And again, that's because there's these state and federal agencies that are the experts and that regulate airports.
Okay, I can ask the airport director.
So Audrey, in 22, I was actually the chair for COAC I was representing our region. This was, I believe, our number 2 ask. It was 5.3 million. So it was confirmed by it was ODOT funding, and in order to build this. So if this actually can be done by October of 25, that will be pretty efficient use of government funds getting something done. I believe that all the lifeguard or all the people that will be working in the tower then are all covered in cost by the FAA. Is that not right? Or do you know that?
So the federal contract tower program essentially allows the FAA to contract out with certain vetted companies that can staff these control towers. And so that's what they're applying under. They'll receive basically funding for staff hours. Their goal actually is to complete construction by this coming up fall. That's their internal goal, but the October 14th, 2025 deadline is a hard deadline to secure funding.
Okay, so they're going to have it done before?
If everything works out correctly.
Okay, good. Thank you.
So as I say, we got some decisions here. Either we adopt a hearings officer decision, or
Yeah, well, I would like to understand the implications for increasing traffic or not, but just that is not within the scope of this land use review, and based on the safety benefits alone, I'm happy to make the motion to move forward with this. So move approval of hearings officer recommendation for file 247-23-000470-TA, approving a text amendment to Deschutes County Code Chapter 18.76 Airport Development Zone and Chapter 18.80 Airport Safety Combining Zone.
I'll second the motion.
okay, so it's been moved and seconded to adopt a hearings officer recommendation or hearings officer decision. Any other discussion? Seeing none, Commissioner Chang? Yes. Commissioner Dare?
Yes.
And chair votes yes. There we go.
Thank you, Commissioners.
Thank you. Yes, Nick.
Chair, we have the public hearing scheduled for 10:10. I understand there's a mic issue someplace occurring, if we could just take a
Sure.
short break, given
Yep,
the
10 minutes.
interest and the importance of the next topic.
Yeah.
And then perhaps reconvene at 10:10.
And we'll acknowledge that. Yeah. So item number 15, public hearing for transportation system plan update is published for 10:10. So we're going to take a 10-minute break.
So it's not just my mic.
Where's the mic?
So we-
Mic check, 1, 2, 3.
Test, can you hear me at all?
Oh, yeah. I don't think.
Test. I don't. You have to be right up to the
You
seat,
should.
so.
Test,
Test. You gotta be right up. To the so.
And that's
I don't-
changed
Yeah,
that.
I have to remember.
Yay.
Learn a little bit more.
This got the room filled up.
It sounds bad.
Yeah, it's a horrible life.
Yeah, and I think I was arguing with my friends from college last night, and it's like, they're kind of.
Test. You gotta be. Test.
Yeah, unless you raise your voice. This is the worst sound system I've ever.
A lot of work done.
Yeah, this teed a lot of stuff up pretty well.
Yeah, I think.
So, kind of making me nervous up here.
We're very soft spoken.
Yeah. Yeah, voices.
Make you guys nervous. Okay, I think I better go have another drink of my life.
Ah. Little Irish cream in there, I hope.
Oh, I wish.
Oh, hot mic. Don't answer that.
I am getting my emails from the Scotland's Hotel in Edinburgh. I stayed there once and just by accident, it's the most phenomenal place. And they have specials for winter. Can you imagine?
Test.
If you didn't have to
Love it.
fly like,
Yeah.
40 miles.
Yeah.
You didn't have to fly. And, and I.
It'll be fun.
Do it. Hi. Yes. Yeah. Yeah. That's why it's teacher.
Yes.
Which do I want? Lipstick or latte?
Losing the room.
Thanks.
Test.
Color these.
At least, Angie, it wasn't only me.
Bad ones. People didn't.
I couldn't hear the lady in the middle.
It was a quiet morning. People weren't talking.
I was like, and somebody texted me and they said they can't hear and I go, well, I can't either.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Transportation system plan. Okay.
Yeah.
We're gonna alternate them in. Yeah, that'd be fun. We'll try to do that. So let's get back together here. We're going to reconvene for item number 15.
Is it really working? I can't hardly.
I'm speaking clearly into the mic. Yeah, it sounds like it's on and we're ready to go. Okay. So item number 15, public hearing for this is the draft 2020-2040 transportation system plan update. This is going to be, we're working our way towards a public hearing on the matter. We're going to have introductory statements. We have multiple people online to testify, it looks like also. So I'm going to try to alternate between somebody in the room and somebody online. I'm just letting our technology folks know. So also when you're online, you'll be able to turn your camera on when you can testify, is my understanding, because we had that turned off in the previously. So we'll see how this all goes. Except being promoted. Okay. And we're going to just pick whoever has a hand raised, we'll just pick the next one. Okay. So at this time, this is the time and place set for a hearing regarding file number 24723 507 PA 508 TA. The hearing concerns a request for a consideration for a plan amendment and text amendment application to update the 2010 to 2030 Deschutes County Transportation System Plan and accompanying map for the 2022-2040 planning period initiated by the applicant, Deschutes County. Staff will outline the hearing procedure that will be followed.
Thank you very much, Commissioner. For the record, Tarek Rawlings, I'm a senior transportation planner with the Community Development Department and the Road Department, and I'm going to share my screen now just for a quick presentation and some housekeeping items. Thank you, Chairman DeBone, for the record. Again, my name is Tarek Rawlings, senior transportation planner. Today, the Board of County Commissioners will take testimony and receive written evidence concerning the county's 2020 to 2040 transportation system plan update. The file numbers as previously listed are 247-23-000-507-PA and 508-TA. Today's hearing will proceed as follows. First, staff will explain the hearing format and how to testify at today's hearing, followed by a brief presentation on the application. Then the testimony portion of the hearing will begin. The applicant will present first, then agencies or government bodies. Next, persons in support will testify, and then those in opposition will testify last. Afterwards, the applicant will then be afforded an opportunity to present rebuttal testimony, and finally, staff can make closing comments if requested. Record materials may be viewed at the project website, which are shown on the screen here. This includes all of the public comments and any relevant records up to the date of the public hearing today. This is a hybrid public hearing with both in-person and remote participation. Before starting your testimony, please provide your first and last name as well as your mailing address. I will note that the board has established time limits for testimony. The applicant will have 30 minutes. Agencies will have 10 minutes. Members of the public will have 3 minutes, and the applicant will have 10 minutes for rebuttal. For our in-person participants, if you wish to testify, please fill out a blue sign-up sheet and submit it to the board secretary, Brenda, to the left of the dais. Chairman DeBone will call up in-person participants for their testimony. After your name is called, please come up to one of the tables at the front of the room before beginning your testimony. For our remote participants, if you want to testify, you must be logged into Zoom or have called in using the Zoom dial-in option. When Chairman DeBone asks if anyone would like to testify, you will need to use the raise hand feature to notify the board. To do this, you need to press the raise hand button on your computer or smart device, or if you called in, dial *9. When it is your turn to provide testimony, you will be promoted from an attendee to a panelist. You may experience a brief pause as your status changes. Once you've joined as a panelist, you'll be able to turn on your camera if you'd like to. In addition to oral testimony, if anyone has written testimony to submit, please hand it to me. If you are in person, please submit your written testimony to me after your testimony. If you are participating remotely, you can submit your written testimony via email to me at tarek.rawlings@deschutes.org, which is shown on the screen here. The chair and staff are responsible for conducting an orderly hearing. Any testimony or behavior which is inappropriate will be addressed and may result in that member of the public being removed from the hearing. At this time, I'm going to stop sharing my screen. And I will now return to the script and note that the commissioners must disclose any ex parte contacts, prior hearing observations, biases, or conflicts of interest.
So a little bit of clarity on this. This is a legislative matter, correct? I mean,
Correct.
we think of this as legislative. So as I say, I've communicated with people on this matter. So yeah, I guess I'm making a comment for myself, but does any commissioner have anything to disclose? And if so, please state the nature of same and whether you can proceed. So let's just, any comments?
I similarly, this being a legislative matter, I've had significant discussions with people about this topic, but I have no conflicts and I can proceed.
And I've discussed it too, and I have no conflicts, and I believe I can proceed.
As I say, I've communicated with folks and I do drive on I've been on most of these roads, I guess, over the years. So as I say, it's just where we're at. But so then this is the next step. Does any party wish to challenge any commissioner based on ex parte contacts, biases, or conflicts? So this is just respecting the process. Is there any raised hand feature here? So at this time, we're talking about conflicts or biases. Somebody wishes to speak possibly on this? At this time, Doreen is going to join us. So Doreen, you've been promoted to participate. We're talking about conflicts of interest or procedural challenges for this public hearing. So you've been promoted to a panelist, which means you can unmute yourself and testify.
Sorry, I was talking muted. So my question,
so that's fine. So as I say, this is time for biases or conflicts or challenges to the process, not testimony yet.
Yep, I am aware. Tony, I just have a question for you. Because you sit on the airport panel advisory board and you guys are paving airport to airport and putting roundabouts in all the way, which does affect those of us that live anywhere near these roads. What benefit or what is there benefit to you to vote in favor of all roads airport to airport?
Okay, so yeah, I'll acknowledge I'm on the Redmond Airport Advisory Committee, city councilor, county commissioner, participants in the Redmond Airport. I'm not involved with the Bend Airport per se. So, I mean, we'll just take your question under advisement. I don't know that there's any specific conflict or procedural challenge.
There's nothing further that.
Yeah. So thank you for your comment at this time. And you can still testify under the regular testimony section.
All right, thanks.
I mean, just to provide a little clarification along those lines, there are, multiple of us commissioners sit on various transportation related committees. I sit on the Bend Metropolitan Planning Organization Policy Board. I believe that Commissioner Adair sits on the Central Oregon Area Commission of Transportation.
Yes, I do.
So thank you very much for your question. And as I say, I have acknowledged. So at this time, I'll acknowledge no challenges specifically presented prior to opening the hearing. Does anyone have any procedural objections? So I guess we do have the script separating those two. So at this time, seeing none, the hearing is now open. Staff will proceed with a brief staff report.
Thank you very much, Chair DeBonne. I'm going to reshare my screen here. We will move into a staff report provided by Kittleson and Associates, and I'm going to move my computer over to Matt here and let him take it away.
Great. Thank you. Matt Kittleson with Kittleson and Associates. We've been supporting the county on the development of the plan in front of you today for the last couple years, and excited to talk about how it was developed and what's included. Just getting right into it. First, what is a TSP, Transportation System Plan? At its core, it's the transportation element of the county's comprehensive plan. And it does a couple important things. First, it provides a list of projects that the county can reasonably fund and implement over the next 20 years. It reflects, and this is important for all counties, but especially Deschutes County, the priority of preserving and maintaining the existing roads. So we're talking about new roads, but also from a financing perspective, how do we maintain the roads that we have? And really, the policies that are included that we'll talk about provides a vision for how the transportation system can operate in the future for people driving, riding bikes, etc. We're updating the TSP now. One, it should be updated periodically. In the last time it was updated was about 10 years ago. And obviously much has happened in the last 10 years. We want to provide a consistent 20-year vision for what needs to happen in the county. There's definitely a decrease in revenue for new investments. That's not just a Deschutes County issue, but a broad issue. Obviously, I know you've heard from ODOT and others about just the challenges related to transportation funding. And certainly we want our plans to reflect those realities as we plan for what can happen in the future. The county plays an important role in a number of regional elements, certainly those local, but also statewide with things like the Cascadia Subduction event. 97 is an important facility, so it's important to have the plan updated for that reason. And then also the county as the largest regional body, it provides an important place for cities and ODOT, CET, et cetera, to have a broad incorporation of other planning efforts as well into the plan. And then, as I mentioned on the financing piece, a key part of looking at the plan at this moment in time was considering and evaluating the roadway moratorium that's been a policy for the county for a number of years, in evaluating and then ultimately confirming that still is an appropriate policy for the county. From a contextual perspective, the county is, of course, broad, and there are 4 incorporated cities in the counties. Those cities operate with their own transportation system plan. Certainly, the interface of those between the county and the city is important. And you'll see that as you see the project list and pictures that I'll share here in a second. Then, of course, ODOT has broad jurisdiction as well in the county. So the county really, the TSP incorporates a number of various agencies that operate in their own right and interface with the county roads. But the county TSP specifically covers county roads. The TSP was shaped through a broad process, a lot of effort with technical groups within the county, county staff, and then our team supporting that. We had 2 public open houses at various times throughout the process, most recently in the spring and December. We had agency partner coordination meetings, which is opportunities for the county to interface with the other agency partners that I mentioned, beyond cities, even things like the Forest Service, et cetera. Specific outreach is needed with ODOT and other partners, and then specific outreach with the county's bicycle and pedestrian advisory committee that had really beneficial input to the planning process. The public involvement process itself, we heard, as I said, a number of comments and input to the 2 open house meetings that we hosted. Most of the comments were around a couple key areas, and this is from the public open house, not this process. Sunrise Boulevard, support for some reclassification and upgrade of that roadway, discussion around the possible Deschutes Riverwood South Interchange project, which is a good example of a coordination project within the TSP. Ultimately, that would be an ODOT project, but listed in the TSP as a concept that could then be further evaluated through project development in the future. Sisters to Black Butte Trail, there's mixed feedback through the public process on that. And then discussion around a Bend Ped Bike Bridge, which is actually a BPRD project, but would be included in the TSP by reference of the BPRD master plan. And there's a number of those type of references that ultimately get incorporated into the TSP as well. The TSP itself has 6 chapters that cover introduction, goals, assessment of how we arrived at the needs in the projects. Chapter 4 discusses some of the more regulatory elements of the TSP. 5 is the projects, and then 6 discusses the funding. So I'll go through a high level of those, and certainly open to discussing any in further detail. Broadly speaking, there's a number of projects and types in the TSP: interchange projects, roadway changes, contributions to ODOT projects, etc. The so what here is that we have just under about $200 million of projects that are needed over the next 20 years. And again, those are capital projects. That's not what the county already does to maintain the existing facilities. All projects included have a estimate from a cost perspective that's really a planning estimate for the purposes of budgeting, developing a capital improvement program. All those are further refined as projects become more developed and refined. At this level, projects are really, in most cases, high-level ideas that are further developed as they become closer to implementation. We include the county transportation safety action plan in this, which is a plan that was done a few years ago and will be updated again shortly. So a broad range of project types. And really, when you think about this list of projects, there's a flexibility for how these can be implemented over time. So while we have a priority listed in the TSP, it doesn't dictate an ordering in the future. The county can be reactive to funding availability, to changing environments, conditions, et cetera. So it helps start the process, but it's not the end of the process in terms of project sequencing going forward. I'll go through a quick overview of just the maps of the projects. And I know these are small dots in a broad county, but the purpose here is just to show the type and scale of projects that exist in the TSP. The first map is intersection projects, and you can see those are largely up and down and near the cities, and those are areas where we would see intersections needing turn lanes, perhaps realignments, roundabouts, etc. So changes to a physical intersection to make those operate more efficiently or more safely. Also, a number of roadway projects, and these are projects that would be reconstruction of existing roads, modernization of roads, new roadway alignments. And again, you'll see there's a broad spectrum of those projects up and down the county, particularly near those interfaces to the urban areas. We see a lot of needs there. That's where a lot of the traffic is. So a lot of the projects are focused in those vicinities. The TSP update also includes recommendations for changes to the county's functional classification system. The functional classification system orders roads in terms of priority, arterials, collectors, local roads. And as changes happen, as more information is learned about how roads operate over the years, the functional classification system can be changed. So on the map and included in the TSP, and there's an accompanying table giving some reasons as to why there's roads that have recommended for a classification to be upgraded. So for example, a collector going to an arterial, or downgraded, which is the opposite, a collector going to a local street, for example. And that's really to align the roads to the type of use, and then ultimately the roadway standard that the county maintains that's necessary going forward. It helps define the projects that happen in the future.
Question on that one real quick. Are there any different road miles or new road miles, or are there just classification changes? As you know, I think of the unmaintained rural roads and road districts, and some of them have kind of the more beaten path. So would anything be taken by the county ever, or is that part of this?
Chris Doty, Road Department Director, Cody Smith, Assistant Director, County Engineer. I'm trying to think of where what you're talking about, fresh road miles.
Yeah, adding to the
taking
system.
over a local access road segment.
So the county has what, 900 miles, and we're talking about functional classification changes, but could that, and is it in this document to say, oh, this, this needs to be more?
Yeah, the one that comes to my mind is the southern interchange to Deschutes River Woods is going to require a connection back to the DRW subdivision. So that would be a new
an existing gravel road that would,
basically, and then how that would fit back on the other side. So I would say very minor, but nothing, we're not building a new corridor per se. We're certainly improving a lot of existing ones.
well, I think of like the Sunrise route is already a county road. It's just changing. I don't know if that's functional classification, but it's not taking it from a road district, I guess was the question.
Correct.
Thank you.
As I mentioned before, there's also a number of ODOT projects, and these are projects that the county may coordinate or partner with ODOT, but wouldn't necessarily be the driver. In fact, the timing, need, funding for those projects would be largely an ODOT-driven effort with rules and regulations as such for those type of projects. But again, is the most regional document, and certainly the county system relies heavily on the ODOT highway system as well. We've listed those in here for the purposes of the TSP. The planned pedestrian facilities exist largely in the Terrebonne and Tumalo area where those type of facilities exist in the county. So changes to the sidewalk network in those areas are also listed in the TSP. And then bicycle facility, this is largely carrying forward the existing bicycle designations in the county. So the bicycle system operates in the county through really kind of two key elements today. One is Oregon Scenic Bikeways, which is a state designation, and several of those exist in the county. And then County Bikeways, which is a designation that was developed at the time of the last TSP update and notes roads that would be, to the extent possible, widened to include a wider shoulder during normal county operations. So it designates those routes to help define projects as those go forward with regular maintenance, et cetera, for bicycles to use. And then, of course, as I mentioned, BPAC before, there's also the inclusion of areas where connections could be provided between communities, recreational areas. And those are listed in a table. There's no specific routes that have been identified for those connections, but really the concept of a connection that could occur. And the same would apply for those routes that I mentioned on a number of these projects. Is in many cases, those projects may be driven by an entity that's not the county, just by roadway ownership or property, but are listed in the TSP as, again, the most regional document that would help define where those connections could be achieved.
Could you say a little bit more about how a road gets a county bikeway designation? For example, Skyliner Road, to the west of the city of Bend, there's a lot of bicycle traffic. I know that roads made special effort to widen the shoulders to accommodate that traffic, but it's not a designated bikeway. And just thinking about the rest of the county, there are definitely a lot of roads that get a lot of bike use that aren't designated here. But how should we think about the difference between busy biking roads and county bikeways?
Yeah, that's a great question. I want to say that what we have, in the document now is a forwarding from the prior TSP and included in this update, really essentially unchanged. Through this process, we've engaged with BPAC to kind of provide that oversight over things. I think they've tacitly agreed that, yeah, that's a good list. As far as Skyliners, I guess I'm a little confused as to why that wouldn't necessarily, have that designation, only that it is a one way up and one way back and not a connection from one place to another. But these things just evolve over time, through feedback from advocates and stakeholders.
I mean, I know that BPAC has had a great focus on transportation, and that Skyliner Road, for example, that's a heavily used recreation amenity. So, if there's no kind of dedicated voice for recreational road cycling, weighing in this process, then maybe that's something for us to think about for next time.
I think that the voice is there. Just recalling back to how Skyliners, evolved. It's been improved since the prior TSP update. It probably didn't have that designation when it was 24-foot wide, through the flat project and how it was improved to include 6-foot bike lanes. It didn't make the list, and we could certainly add that just as a, recognition of that, but it certainly isn't being downgraded or doesn't provide, the width for that type of use.
Thank you.
Also, projects that are important to the transportation system you might not think about are things like bridges. Obviously, bridges are important to have and operate well. So identifying where replacement or rehabilitation of bridges is needed has also been included as another way of planning the county's infrastructure projects going forward. Chris mentioned FLAP projects. That's a federal lands access program. So that's a specific funding source that, as I'm sure you're aware, Deschutes County is uniquely positioned to have access to with the federal designations that provide that funding. So there's a number of projects that are specifically listed that would qualify, and that's again to help leverage the dollars the county has to be able to go after those projects in the future. Transit, Cascades East Transit operates in the county. They maintain their own master plan. So again, this is a plan that would be adopted by reference into the TSP, and just helps provide other transportation options for people that live in the county, but also people accessing the county areas from the urban areas. I mentioned the TSAP briefly before, and just wanted to highlight that the top priority projects are included in the TSP. As that document becomes updated, it may well be that those projects are then incorporated back into the TSP in a real-time fashion. So it's an important document. And just for context, the Transportation Safety Action Plan identifies specific projects that not only respond to places that have had crash history, but also takes a proactive look at identifying areas that could be improved to prevent crashes from occurring in the future. So it's an important way to think about improvements to the transportation system. And then funding. I mentioned this briefly, but I'll just highlight it here, is maintaining the maintenance and operational standards of the county is a real priority. That's an important thing. It's something a lot of jurisdictions struggle with in my experience, but the county does it really well to say we have to maintain what we have, and that's an important part of the funding. I mentioned the road moratorium. That's recommended to continue as a policy within the TSP. And then we're assuming, for the purposes of forecasting, that the funding levels remain consistent, and that anything that we get in terms of a grant or federal funding is really additive to here. So we're taking an approach that what can we do ourselves, and then everything else helps to leverage that in the future. Once the plan is adopted, it really then becomes something that moves into action. It helps the county coordinate with local, state, federal entities and agencies to identify funding and projects. There's continued work that has to happen with partners and agencies to help actually implement this. Identifying projects from a CIP list perspective is obviously ongoing and is heavily informed by the TSP. And all of these projects, as they move into project development, will have future public outreach, engagement, as specific project details are further understood and refined through design and development. So a project being on the TSP, to be specific, doesn't then grant approval. Of course, it merely identifies it as a need that could then be addressed through a specific project. And of course, just I mentioned the policies before, but any policies are very important to the document of just helping to guide the county decision making and addressing things that aren't specifically outlined in the TSP. I think that's it.
I'm gonna take it back from Matt real quick, and I'll just give a little more context again. Tarek Rawlings with CDD. I was gonna give some background just on the planning commissions and the process for this actual legislative review up to this point. So the originally this was reviewed by the planning commission through an initial public hearing on August 10th. There was an open record period that was extended by the planning commission until August 24th. And then ultimately the planning commission entered deliberations on October 12th. During that October 12th meeting, the planning commission recommended that the board of county commissioners adopt the drafted TSP, including the following 5 amendments. The first amendment would be to remove the conceptual multi-use pathway connection between City of Sisters and Black Butte Ranch. There were 6 commissioners in favor and 1 commissioner in opposition to that amendment. The second amendment would be to change the multi-use pathway connection between Baker Road and Lava Butte to be located on the west side of the Highway 97 rather than the east side. And there were 7 commissioners unanimously in favor of that particular amendment. The third amendment was to change the priority status for the 2nd Street Cook Avenue sidewalks in Tumalo from a medium to a high priority status. And there were 6 commissioners in favor, 1 commissioner absent for that particular amendment. The fourth amendment was to change the priority status for the Highway 20 Powell Butte Highway Roundabout project from a low to a high priority. Again, 6 commissioners in favor, 1 commissioner was absent. And then the fifth and final amendment was to change the priority status for the Highway 20 Locust Street Roundabout project from a low to a high priority. And noting that the project with contributions from Deschutes County, City of Sisters, and ODOT is funded for construction in 2024. And again, 6 commissioners in favor, 1 commissioner was absent for that particular amendment. A summary of the written comments here, and this is on page 233 and 234 of your packet materials. This is just kind of a general bullet list of the, and we've gotten more than 160 comments by the time this we've had the public hearing today. We're probably over 200 now, I would think. I'd have to do a particular, quite a bit of interest in this proposal. One, just kind of in order here, there's the, in terms of the topics that have come up for public comment, with one major comment or topic was the allowance or disallowance of multi-use pathways in the rural county, generally, related to wildlife values and or resource zone lands. There was comments about the multi-use pathway connection between City of Sisters and Black Butte Ranch that you'd heard, in previous slides about what the planning commission amended, based on that topic. There was discussion about the potential development of a footbridge across the Deschutes River near the Brookswood neighborhood of Deschutes River Woods. That's been also a pretty widely commented on topic. There's comments on the classification change and improvement of Sunrise Boulevard that had been mentioned by Kittleson and previously in the presentation. The Deschutes River Woods South Interchange project has been mentioned. And then the City of Redmond, their US 97 South Interchange, the quarry or McVeigh project has been highlighted mostly by City of Redmond. Continuing with some of the topics heard, there were concerns regarding the local access roads in special road districts along that include Island Loop Way, kind of within the Three Rivers community in South County. That the concerns were pretty specifically about replacing a canal crossing along Island Loop Way. There was also broader sentiment requesting sort of a comprehensive community planning process for Three Rivers for traffic infrastructure improvements, but sort of just comprehensive community planning in general. There were concerns with the operational aspects of the Bend Municipal Airport. There were requests to change priority statuses for several transportation related projects, which we had previously heard. Discussion of designation of bicycle routes, adequacy of county-based public transit, and then some discussion of vegetation management practices for county transportation facilities. I suppose just kind of noting, the planning commission did discuss other topics, and they really, I mean, including just a broad discussion of multi-use pathways. They also discussed things like dark skies sort of in a broader sense. And in those cases, even though those motions didn't make it to a fully an amendment that made it into the recommendation of the board, they were sometimes very close in those votes. And that was a sentiment they wanted me to carry forward to the board, that although they ultimately didn't make it to an amendment, they were often very much aligned on the large parts of those discussions, and they diverged on some of the details. So just a bit more context on the planning commission's process.
Or can I ask a couple questions about comments received to date? First off, someone from the City of Sisters contacted me to say that the city had sent in a letter, a formal letter from the city government requesting that the multi-use pathway between the City of Sisters and Blackbeat Ranch be brought back, that it stay in the TSP. Can you confirm that?
Yeah, I can confirm. That was received yesterday just before 4 p.m., but that was on behalf of the City of Sisters City Council was how that was addressed. That has been incorporated into record. I don't imagine you've had a ton of time to review that.
No, I
4 p.m. yesterday, but that did make its way in.
A late night text message. Just
Yeah,
wanted to
we're
confirm.
getting them still.
Yes.
They're coming in literally as we're presenting. So we'll have more comments.
And and I'm sort of tracking the balance of comments for and against various multi-use pathway proposals, but the footbridge across the Deschutes River near Brookswood neighborhood, I don't have a sense of the total volume of comments for and against.
Certainly, I would have to tally them up, but I would say broadly, just to generally categorize or characterize the public comments received. We've seen some in-person testimonies at the planning commission level that was opposed to, and also some testimony within the comprehensive plans process that talks to this footbridge. There was a limited number of oppositional comments to that footbridge, and there have been a considerable amount of supportive comments. I would say without a tally, there's probably more supportive comments for the footbridge currently in record than opposing.
Great, thank you.
And I can get a closer tally for you when we come back for deliberation.
That's okay, thank you.
And just moving forward here, again, this project specific website is shown on your screen here. This is where you can view the entire record. It's evolving as we speak. So if there's an open record period or something like that, that might be the time that this kind of settles the influx of public comments and things. But this is where that entire record is kept for you. So next steps is at the conclusion of today's public hearing, the board may choose kind of one of any of these four options here. The board can hold the oral and written record open and continue continue the hearing to a date certain. The board can close the oral record and hold the written record open to a date certain. The board can close both the oral and written record and set a date certain for deliberations, or the board can close both the oral and written record and begin deliberations. And with that, thanks for your time, and we're available for any questions you might have. I'm going to stop sharing my screen at this time.
Any other questions?
Like to hear the testimony.
Yeah, so at this time, it's a public hearing on the matter. So thank you very much for the introduction and the big scope of this topic. So at this time.
Could I make
sure,
a couple comments before we hear the testimony? I just wanted to broadly say I am really excited about this bundle of projects and this financial plan that are going to provide benefits in terms of mobility, in terms of safety, in terms of access to work, shopping, education, health services, recreation to so many Deschutes County residents. I think so. That's the big picture of this transportation system plan. I know there's a lot of folks here who want to comment on some specific pieces, and I know that there's a lot of concern specifically about paved pathways, and I just wanted, before we hear public testimony, I did want to emphasize, maybe clarify for people how these paved pathway projects in the draft TSP are a little different than most of the other projects in here. In contrast to some of the other projects, paved pathways, if they're included in this TSP, are included mostly as a symbolic statement. The county is not going to fund, build, or maintain any of these paved pathways that people are talking about. So we're not talking about, with the paved pathways mentions in this TSP, we're not talking about county plans. We're talking about hopes that people have in our community. And because the projects are different in that way than other things that are mentioned in the TSP, I hope that folks who are concerned about those topics can kind of view the inclusion or exclusion in that way. We're not the landowners. And again, we're not the ones who are going to fund, build, or operate these facilities. So on some levels, what the county says about these projects doesn't even matter to whether they get built or they don't get built. But they are a statement of our hopes, or our aspirations around these trails. So would just love to have people think about inclusion or exclusion in those ways.
Thank you. So as I say, I'm going to alternate in the room and online. We'll see how this goes. Haven't done it before, but we're going to start off with Chris Cassard, and then following, we'll go ahead and promote maybe the next person, however we can do this online. So a raised hand feature for remotely testifying today.
Good morning, Commissioners.
Oh.
My name's Chris Cassard. I'm a resident.
Yeah, make sure you talk into the mic. So this is this is broadcast. Yeah, there you go.
I'm a Bend resident. I'm also a member of your BPAC committee, but today I'm not testifying as part of BPAC. I'm testifying as a private citizen and resident of Bend. I come to speak today in favor of the TSP as drafted. The bike pedestrian portion of the TSP draft, in words and in maps, represents a vision of a two-wheeled alternative as part of our transportation system. That speaks to what you said, Commissioner Chang, just a moment ago. This TSP is really a vision statement. There are many reasons to adopt the vision. I'll get to those in a moment, but foremost among them is safety. We're all aware that pedestrians and cyclists are killed every year while navigating our roads. In Bend, on Highway 97, on Cascade Lakes Highway, east of Bend, just to remember a few that have happened in the last several years. This TSP vision, above all, in its bicycle pedestrian elements, aims to improve safety for all road users. At the same time, it promotes several other important objectives. The vision supports transportation equity by providing safe infrastructure for folks in low-income and isolated communities who may not have a car, but still need to get around. The vision supports economic development. And Commissioner DeBonne, I've heard you speak a number of times about the importance of economic development by encouraging our already significant cycle tourism business. And beyond that, cycles can be used for commuting by the workforce. The vision supports climate resilience by helping reduce traffic on the auto routes and gas-powered miles driven. Furthermore, this vision can be accomplished incrementally and opportunistically by adding one piece at a time as canals are piped or county roads are repaved or highway projects are undertaken, again, referring back to what Commissioner Chang said a moment ago. Most importantly of all, though, this is a vision of transportation safety by separating bikes and pedestrians from auto travel lanes to the greatest extent practical, by grade-separated paths, or by providing wider bike lanes or other infrastructure. This vision is not several things. It is not a be-all, end-all answer to the transportation challenges that the county faces. It is not an unfunded mandate for immediate action. It is not an abandonment of our attention to wildlife migration corridors, because the connections discussed will most likely align with transit corridors already in use. Finally, this is not a vision that is impossible to achieve. The distances between communities and other destinations are well within the current range of current bikes and e-bikes, certainly, and the equipment keeps improving. Commissioners, in other parts of the United States, and certainly throughout Europe, shopping, commuting, doing daily errands by cycle or e-bike are already a well-accepted reality.
Deschutes County would hardly be the first to adopt such a vision. There's no reason I can think of that this should not be the vision for our communities and our county. But again, the most fundamental reason for adopting this vision as written in the TSP is the safety of all the users of our roads and highways. It's an expression by this commission that safety of of the entire transportation system for everyone is the priority. I urge you to adopt the transportation system plan as initially drafted. Thank you.
Thank you very much. So testimony is 3 minutes today, and you kind of tricked me. You said, and finally at the bottom of your first page, and then you flipped the page on me. But yeah, no, not a problem. I'm just acknowledging to the room that estimate about 3 minutes for testimony. So is there thank you very much.
Commissioner, just a quick note. We typically do start with the agencies giving testimony.
Oh, yeah. Okay. Yeah, we didn't.
We had at least a representative from.
Yeah.
So my apologies for chiming in too late here, but.
Yeah, and we have done that as previous practice. I do apologize. We didn't get to that today. So, well, let's get that first person that was going to be online because we might have promoted somebody already. And then following will be ODOT and other agencies.
This might be an agency as well, is what it looks like. So.
Great. Well, so as a counselor, as I say, a 3-minute testimony is the expectation here, unless you're officially representing the transportation.
Representing the city of Sisters.
I believe that the Sister City Council did.
But just 10
take a
minutes.
Formal vote and.
So, yeah, I mean, if you think you need to take 10 minutes, fine then.
Oh, trust me,
No
I
need
don't
to
need 10
challenge
minutes.
that.
I'd like to read into the record the letter that was referred to by Councilor Chang in support. This is from the mayor, Michael Prieden, on behalf of the entire city council. I'm Gary Ross, Sister City Councilor. Subject: support for the inclusion of the Sisters to Black Butte Ranch bike path corridor in the county's transportation system plan. Dear members of the Board of County Commissioners, I am writing to express the support of the Sister City Council for the inclusion of the proposed Sisters to Black Butte Ranch bike path corridor in the county's transportation system plan. We believe that establishing a bike path connecting Sisters to Black Butte Ranch holds numerous advantages for our community. This corridor would not only offer a safer and alternative means of transportation for pedestrians, individuals with mobility challenges, and cyclists, but also contribute to the reduction of vehicle congestion in our busy downtown area. The Sister City Council is particularly invested in ensuring that our trails infrastructure is designed to be inclusive and accessible to all residents. By supporting the development of this path, we are working towards creating a more connected community that benefits both our residents and visitors alike. We request your consideration of including this project in the TSP as it aligns with our shared goals of enhancing accessibility, promoting alternative transportation options, and fostering a vibrant and healthy community. Sincerely, Michael Prieden, Mayor. I'm done with my testimony. I will be back with you later during the 3-minute period as a citizen.
Okay. Great. Councilor Ross, thank you very much for reading that into the record. One question, was there any discussion about kind of public safety matters? And I know that one of the aspects of having these trails is, we're seeing people set up in the public lands around our cities. And now there's possibly going to be an improved path between there. And then we end up in a public safety situation. Who's going to patrol for that? And my question, and that's a big sticky subject, but was that discussed at all at the city council?
Yeah, it was. And I think part of the issue here is how you look at it and how you locate it. I think we already have people using the forest and we know that. I don't think a transportation corridor between our two communities is going to significantly increase the presence of the individuals you're referring to along that pathway. They're pretty much clustered around town. That's where they want to be. They come into town for services, and that's what we're struggling with as a community. I think locating your camp somewhere between Sisters and Black Butte Ranch, maybe in the middle of the woods, might appeal to a couple of folks who are already there down along the riverway and stuff. You go in on those back roads and you find them. It's not going to increase. I heard the same thing when I was an owner in Sun River when they were looking at the Benham Falls path. There was doom and gloom and tents every 30 feet, and none of that has occurred. So I think that we have to look at that. And as far as who patrols it, I think that's a question that is really appropriate for the city, for the council, your council, as you will be the jurisdiction that oversees that corridor. And keep in mind that there is an electrical corridor being cut through there, which is fairly wide by CEC, which provides almost as good an access as what we're talking about for the type of individuals you're concerned with. So that's where I am on it. I mean, we did discuss it, but you've got to look at 20 years out and what's best for every community in 20 years. That's what a TSP is. And that's why we're asking this to be included.
Great, thank you so much. So other agencies, I see ODOT is in the room. As I said, I don't know if you had filled out a form now. Thanks for joining us.
Thanks for having me. Excuse me. I'll be more than 3 minutes in less than 10.
Yeah, that's fine. Understood. So David, yeah, I got your blue form here. So thank you.
Good morning, members of the board. My name is David Amatin. I'm the Planning and Programming Manager for ODOT Region 4. And I'm here today providing testimony on ODOT's behalf related to the TSP. First, thank you for the opportunity to share comments with you, and thank you to county staff for the work you've dedicated to the TSP over the past 3 years. We at ODOT really appreciate your efforts and the coordination you've maintained with us throughout the process. We've worked with the county over the past several years to incorporate ODOT projects into the TSP that will benefit Deschutes County residents and visitors. And while the form these improvements take differs from project to project, the goal is the same for each one, which is to support the ability of people to travel safely to destinations throughout Deschutes County. And we look forward to working with the county to implement these projects in the years to come. I'm here this morning to specifically reiterate ODOT's support for one project, which is the US 97 Baker Road to Lava Butte multi-use path, and that's identified as Project S3 in the TSP. The project supports alternative transportation between visitor destinations like High Desert Museum, Lava Lands Visitor Center, and Benham Falls, as well as between the communities of Bend and Sunriver. ODOT's preferred alignment for the path begins on the east side of US 97 at Knott Road, continues south to the High Desert Museum, then crosses to the west side of 97 using an undercrossing, and continues south to the Lava Lands Visitor Center. Our preferred alignment was submitted into the record as part of our written testimony. And except for minor easements on High Desert Museum property, and the museum is a project partner, the east side of the preferred alignment is completely within existing ODOT right-of-way. The entire east side of the preferred alignment will be owned, operated, and maintained by ODOT. As you've seen in the staff report, the Planning Commission voted at its October 12th hearing to recommend that the path be restricted to the west side of 97. The commission's restriction was proposed and deliberated without any notice to ODOT, without any input from ODOT, and ODOT was not allowed to provide any input or background information that could have informed the commission's deliberations. The commission's recommendation conflicts with ODOT's preferred alignment, and we encourage this board to adopt the TSP as originally drafted without any such restriction included. We believe the preferred alignment, which utilizes both east and west sides of 97, respects and provides consistency with previous planning and public engagement efforts, current design and engineering efforts, and the statutes, administrative rules, and county codes that govern projects in Oregon and Deschutes County. While we at ODOT weren't given the opportunity to share this information with the Planning Commission, I'm pleased to be able to do so today with this board. The Baker Road to Lava Butte multi-use path was first identified in the Deschutes County National Forest, Deschutes National Forest Alternative Transportation Feasibility Study in 2015, a process that included participation from both Deschutes County and ODOT staff. In the years since, ODOT sought and received funding through the Federal Lands Access Program to evaluate alignments and engage stakeholders in the selection of a preferred alignment. This resulted in an initial planning study in 2017, a follow-up technical memo in 2020. The 2017 study evaluated 3 alignments and summarized opportunities and challenges associated with each. The follow-up technical memo evaluated those 3 refined alignment alternatives and recommended the east-west alternative that I referenced earlier as the preferred alignment. These efforts relied on multiple criteria to evaluate the alternatives, including private property impacts, user experience, trailhead access, and network connectivity. Compared with other options, the preferred alignment results in fewer impacts to private property, provides a better experience for path users, avoids the safety hazards of direct proximity to the railroad on the west side of 97, and integrates more seamlessly with walking and biking infrastructure along Knott Road, including the planned Arnold Canal Trail that provides continuous connections to Alpenglow Park, Caldera High School, and growing neighborhoods in Southeast Bend. We at ODOT concluded the alternatives evaluation in 2021 with an online open house to gather feedback from the public. The open house was available for nearly a month and offered members of the public an opportunity to provide input on all three alignment alternatives. Of the over 60 respondents, nearly 90% supported the preferred alignment, which again begins on the east side of 97 before eventually crossing to the west side of the highway. In 2018, ODOT applied for additional federal funding to design and construct the eventual preferred alternative. And since completing the planning study, tech memo, and online open house, we've progressed to a conceptual design stage based on the preferred alignment, working closely with staff at Deschutes National Forest and the High Desert Museum to address parking and access needs. Through this partnership, we'll utilize existing parking facilities on High Desert Museum property to supplement access to the path. At the same time, we've coordinated with Deschutes County staff to address outstanding questions related to the county zoning code, zoning map, and comprehensive plan as they pertain to lands the preferred alignment passes through. We've applied for a declaratory ruling to answer these questions, and a public hearing before a hearings officer has been scheduled. The Planning Commission was not made aware of these planning, design, and public involvement efforts. The alignment restriction was proposed and deliberated without any input from ODOT, and ODOT wasn't allowed to provide any input or background information that could have informed deliberations. Without this information, the Commission's deliberations relied on several assertions, including that ODOT hadn't gathered any public input to inform the path's planning and design, that the proposed path would run through lands under timber practice, and that there was already an existing path on the west side of 97. As this testimony documents, extensive planning, design, and public involvement efforts informed the preferred alignment. The east side of the preferred alignment does not pass through any lands under timber practices, and there is no existing path on the west side of 97. We at ODOT are also concerned that the Commission's recommendation conflicts with Oregon Revised Statutes, administrative rules, and Deschutes County Code. Oregon Revised Statutes give the Oregon Transportation Commission broad supervision and control over state highway facilities. Counties can provide support, opposition, and recommendations for a project or design element, but they do not have the authority to dictate the location and construction details of improvements on the state system. To that end, Oregon administrative rules require transportation planning documents to coordinate with affected agencies and remain consistent with previous planning efforts. As this testimony details, the Commission's recommendation to restrict the path to the west side of 97 was not coordinated with ODOT, nor is the recommendation consistent with past planning and public involvement efforts. The recommendation also presents inconsistencies with county code. The preferred alignment passes through lands on the east side of 97, where county code likely allows the path as an outright permitted or conditional use. The Commission's recommendation to restrict the path to the west side of 97, when county code permits such a use on the east side, would circumvent ODOT's participation in the county's land use process while putting the proposed TSP in conflict with county code. In summary, the draft TSP presents a shared vision for the future of transportation in Deschutes County. We believe that vision should reflect and build upon previous planning efforts and public input, support ongoing design efforts, and demonstrate consistency with statutes, rules, and code. The Planning Commission's recommendation to restrict the Baker Road to Lava Butte multi-use path to the west side of 97 runs counter to these goals, and we at ODOT encourage this board to adopt the TSP as originally drafted without any such restriction. Thank you.
So question, what if it isn't in the TSP? It's in the right of way. You know, you're talking about zoning and timberlands and stuff, but it's all in the right of way, which is an existing right of way. So what if it's not in the TSP? Does it need to be?
that's a question that I would in some ways defer to the county on. There is some language in county code that implies, depending on certain interpretations of zoning, there's some language in county code that implies that the project would need to be, I believe the term is consistent with the TSP. Whether or not it's a listed project, I think we can and will again demonstrate consistency with the 2012 and the 2023 TSP, regardless of whether it's a listed project.
Great. Yeah, we'll learn a little bit about that.
At the high level in here, the description of the project doesn't specify the configuration. West side, east side are combined. So, on some level, if we're talking about, if we're talking about potentially removing this from the TSP, I think we could just leave it in here and not say anything about an east side configuration, a west side configuration, or a combined configuration, and just name the project at that high level, and let all of the stakeholders figure it out.
And Commissioner, that is ODOT's preference.
Thank you very much. Anything else? Thanks for joining us. Are there any other agencies that we know of specifically now?
Just tied to this project, there is one question I would love to ask County Roads, which is, I was just looking at the map.
I'm in the middle of public testimony. I don't know how far you want to go with.
This is pretty relevant. I would just like to understand, in this corridor, on the west side of Highway 97, we have Scalehouse Road. On the east side of Highway 97, we have Cheyenne Road. I wanted to just clarify whether those are both county roads open to the public.
For the record, Cody Smith, excuse me, County Engineer, Assistant Road Department Director. Cheyenne Road, yes, that is a county road. Scalehouse Road, no, that is not a county road.
It's a local access road.
I don't believe Scalehouse Road is a public road, at least necessarily under our definition of a public road. So I couldn't speak to exactly the status. ODOT staff could probably maybe speak better to the status of Scalehouse Road than I could.
And this just ties back to Councilor Ross's comment that when he was talking about the power line, corridor, when an infrastructure corridor exists and people can roll a shopping cart or roll a bicycle or drive their car down it, people will do that. And this is, so those roads provide access to the same areas where these potential proposed pathways are going to be. So the point being that anyone who wanted to access those areas on a bicycle or with a shopping cart or something like that already has a surface to roll their vehicle on. Thank you.
Okay.
So do we have somebody online? So 2224, thank you for joining us on the phone. There's an unmute feature, what's the procedure?
*6, maybe?
I believe it's *9.
Oh, 9.
*9. So yeah, that's why I didn't say it, because I wasn't sure.
We're moving up.
So since it's a Zoom call, you've dialed in, and *9 would be unmuting yourself. Sabrina Haggerty is going to be next also. So just one moment. Let's see if we can get somebody online or not. So yeah, this will, for this phone call, 2224, you said? If there's unmute, *9. Sabrina, please proceed. We're trying.
Hello, my name is Sabrina Haggerty. I'm a Deschutes County resident, and specifically, and also a newer member of the Bicycle and Pedestrian Advisory Committee. I'm here today to show my support for the non-motorized bicycle and pedestrian paths as part of the proposed updates to the county's TSP. If the draft plan is adopted as written, it will be the first time it would call out the need for safe bicycling and walking as significant transportation options. The identification of a low-stress bicycle and pedestrian travel network between municipalities is important and probably something that many of us take for granted as something our planners are already thinking about. It's important to have these connections identified and included in the plan because the agencies that could build them in the future would be more likely to receive funding for them. Because as we mentioned earlier, these don't necessarily have funding yet. As the region grows, we need to be thinking about all modes of transportation. It would be short-sighted otherwise, considering the projected population and employment growth for the county over the next 20 years. A diverse transportation network is something that will benefit everyone in the community. BPAC has put a lot of work over the past several years to develop the recommended language for the TSP, and it's important to remember that they did not do this in a vacuum and worked across agencies and municipalities to develop their recommendations. Including the proposed bicycle and pedestrian language into the plan will also directly support the 7 outlined goals to achieve the county's transportation vision for the next 20 years. Please show your support by voting to adopt the TSP with language as written that supports a network of safe bicycle and pedestrian infrastructure, including the multi-use paths and broader travel network that connects our communities and recreational areas. Thank you.
Thank you. So online. Gary Ross, welcome back. And following will be Matt Cyrus.
Hi. Just real quickly, a couple of thoughts as a citizen related to this. And also my experience is 18 years in elected office in both special districts and city councils. I've been involved in a lot of long-range planning, both with the Willamette Park and Recreation District and with the Sister City Council, and also as citizen input on city activities when I lived in the Valley. And I think that you need to understand about a long-range plan, and I'm speaking as much to the people in the audience, you folks, I know you already know this, is that it's a 20-year vision. It's as Councilor Chang pointed out, it's not necessarily funding, it's a strategy for where we think we may want to go over the next 20 years. Oftentimes going after certain types of funding, you need to have these sorts of activities included in your transportation plan, your long-range plan, to show this is something you've thought about and considered. So I think that removing the multi-use paths or changing them from the original suggestions based upon the Planning Commission or upon hype and hysteria is probably short-sighted, and we're probably not doing our citizens any favors in the long run. Do I expect to see Sisters of Blackview path in the next 10 years? No. When I see it in the next 20 years? Maybe. I think that we really need to have it in this so we can talk about how it happens and begin the dialogue and address the concerns of folks that I think are legitimate. I'm not discounting the concerns that some of the people in this room probably have. And I also think it's important that we not back ourselves into a corner by removing something from a 20-year plan that citizens 10 to 15 years from now might embrace. So that's why I'm asking that you consider the plan as presented and not remove that particular path, even though I know there is concerns and those sorts of things. But the reality is that path's not going to happen anytime soon. And I think we have time to address that. And hopefully we'll address it by eliminating some of the issues that are putting people in our woods to begin with. So I thank you for your time. I thank you for your service. And I'm going to sign off and leave, even though I'd like to hear some of the other folks because I have another meeting to go to. So thank you very much.
Thank you so much. Have a great day. So Matt Cyrus next.
Yeah, thank you. My name is Matt Cyrus. I reside in the Sisters area. I also serve on the County Planning Commission.
Thank you for your service on the Planning Commission.
I'm here on behalf of myself, but first I'd like to explain just a little bit of background with what you're hearing today. We did review a lot of testimony from a lot of people in the decisions we make and the recommendations that we put forward, and we would certainly appreciate your consideration in adopting the Planning Commission recommendations. I would also like to address the concerns from ODOT in the fact that we did hold a public hearing and left the record open for another 2 weeks, and they chose not to participate in that process with regard to the trail from Bend to Lava Butte or Lava Lands, because we did specifically ask if there was any information in the record, and staff found that there was none. So it was not on the fault of the Planning Commission in that information was not part of the record. Couple things I'd like to point out is there is a significant amount of information in the record regarding the deer and wildlife overlays and the impacts of trails on deer, and the fact that a public trail and pedestrians and bicycles actually have a far greater impact on deer than vehicular traffic. There's the studies in the record you can take a look at yourselves. I would suggest, in addition to that you consider the motions that were close on behalf of the commission, and that would be prohibit trails adjacent to resource lands. They have a significant impact, negative impact on resource lands. And in fact, LUBA has addressed a case in the Valley related to that in favor of opposing the trails. Also, I would propose prohibiting the trails within the wildlife overlays because of the severe impact on the wildlife. The Sister to Black Butte Trail, there was overwhelming opposition to that trail. It's been debated in Sisters for the last 15 years. It's been highly divisive in the community. Forest Service has taken it off of their work plan and do not intend to consider it again unless there's overwhelming support. It needs to come off the list. The Bend to Lava Lands, ODOT mentioned that they would own it and maintain it. They can't even pay for plowing snow on the highways. I don't know how they're going to maintain more trails. And the trails and the paths that they're creating simply create more homeless infrastructure. I mean, you can't even go to use the trails in the city of Bend with the number of tents that are on the trails. You've got problems with the homeless everywhere else. All you're doing is creating additional problems. And I would suggest, in addition, is that the bicycle routes that were discussed earlier, we didn't discuss in the Planning Commission. But one thing I would suggest is that limit the designated bicycle routes to areas that are collector or better, that have sufficient shoulders to allow safe passage. And when you start adding more bicycle routes to areas without shoulders, you create a lot bigger concern and problem with safety. So with that, thank you.
Thank you so much. So online. So you're being brought in as a panelist. You'll need to unmute yourself.
Hi, yes, I think I.
Oh, great. Thank you. Yep.
Yeah. Hello, I am Emmy Andrews. I am the executive director of CODA, the Central Oregon Trail Alliance. And some friends in the community let us know about this hearing and the TSP. And we have submitted a formal letter to the record, but we also just wanted to be here today to say that we definitely support the things in the TSP, and in the staff report, there are a couple of changes that would actually reduce the amount of bike and pedestrian infrastructure, and we would not support those proposed amendments. We would support the TSP as written with the bike and pedestrian vision that is stated. We also are in support of the footbridge. And I definitely would echo a lot of what Gary Ross said. I thought that was very well said, that, you know, this is the kind of community that Central Oregon wants to be for the next 20 years, and we need to start now. I certainly have empathy for those who have some fear around how these things would specifically be done, and I think all of those things can be worked out. As a person who's involved in planning trails and, you know, planning routes, I see time and time again that when done in a smart way, infrastructure like that for alternative modes of transportation can be done with very minimal impacts on wildlife. There are ways to, you know, have short-term closures. If, for example, you needed to do something like spraying on an adjacent property, there are lots of ways to do these kinds of things so that there are minimal impacts, or even to package them with other projects that actually end up improving conditions for wildlife and other or natural resource concerns. So there are very good ways to do these things, and we needn't be scared of digging in and doing that work. Let's see if there was anything. Yeah, I guess I would just also echo some of what the folks in the VPAC were saying, just that one of the main things I hear as Bend and the surrounding area changes is concern about traffic. And that is only going to get worse if we don't take steps to get people out of cars. And when we do take steps to get people out of cars, we improve quality of life, we reduce air pollution, we improve health, safety, livability, mental and physical health. So providing that low stress infrastructure for bikes and pedestrians, I think, is going to make our community a much better place, and very much in support of seeing that in this TSP. And I'll end it there. Thank you.
Thank you so much for your testimony. Rex Parks next.
Morning, Commissioners. Thanks for having me here. Rex Parks Senior. I reside 66995 Lance Road. I'm also the president of the Bend chapter of the Oregon Hunters Association. The Bend chapter Oregon Hunters Association stands in opposition of the proposed multi-use trail alignment from south of Bend to the Lavalands Visitor Center. As proposed, if placed on the east side of Highway 97, we believe this alignment will have a negative impact on mule deer usage of the existing winter range habitat between Bend and the High Desert Museum. It's already well known that the presence of people, their dogs, bicyclists, and other user groups alter the feeding, bedding, and migration habits of our mule deer. The added stress of these trail users, especially during the winter months, where forage is harder to find, will only accelerate the downward spiral of the mule deer population in this part of Deschutes County. Multiple studies have shown that added stress caused by the disruption in the feeding and rest cycles of adult female mule deer leads to less fawn production, and fawns that aren't born as healthy and are therefore less likely to mature to the point they're able to escape predators. The continuation of the trail system that already exists between Sunriver and the Lavalands onto Bend will undoubtedly result in much more usage than that of the current trails. The Sunriver to Lavalands trail passes through a known migration corridor, which has multiple highway underpasses to aid in the safe passage of our mule deer during their migration. Constructing a trail system that attracts additional users to travel from Sunriver to Bend through these mule deer migration routes will result in even more disturbance and further the fragmentation of this vital Central Oregon mule deer habitat. This, according to ODF&W's recently proposed winter overlay, is something the county should avoid. Thank you.
Thank you very much for your testimony.
Rex, can I ask you, has ODF&W provided any formal opinion or input?
They have
on
remained
this?
silent on this, to my knowledge, as far as this proposal. And that's where we kind of, as an organization, we have a little issue with is why they were vocal on the overlay that because of the fragmentation of that causes was being of this, but now they're not mentioning this part of it.
Yeah, I mean, I would also be curious to hear whether there's ways that the underpass that's being proposed here over by High Desert Museum could function essentially as an additional wildlife undercrossing.
Wildlife is known, they were the preferred path for wildlife is to go over the highway and not under it. Because the records have shown from camera footage that elk won't use the underpasses for the most part because they look them in as a tunnel. And the deer, there's a presentation coming up at our January regular meeting for our membership. There's Corrine Ottakirk from OSU undergraduate study. Been studying with cameras. She's got them set up at all the underpasses. If anyone goes down there, they'll see these cameras set up at the underpasses down here. Those are hers that she has set up through OSU to show what wildlife that approaches these underpasses versus continuing through. And there's only been one elk that's passed through there since these underpasses are put in. Multiple deer use them, but the elk want them to go over. I'm also on the committee for the Bend to Subtle Lake wildlife passage. So we're looking at one. That's another thing that we are concerned with is the sisters to Black Butte. That trail system will go through a known migration route there that's just east of Black Butte. They're at Indian Ford. That's where the first proposed crossing, next crossing for wildlife will be, is in there. If the trails are next to the highway and they can be under, in right alongside the highway, so you don't have people out in the forest, it's not going to have near the impact. And that's our concern. The more people get away from the highway on these bicycles with their dogs, and it's known through studies that the dog urine and coyote urine, that deer doesn't know which one it was, and they're going to avoid that area.
Okay, so
That's our concern with any kind of trail system that gets away from the highway.
so just to recap from the earlier part of your comments, so the undercrossings on 987 south of this location, those are working for deer to some degree.
Yes, they are working very well for deer. There's been I think the last number I heard was it's close to 90% reduction in vehicle deer strikes. The main ones that are happening is where those fences that our chapter actually maintains, those fences, that have been put in there to keep the deer and the elk from going, onto the highway. They come to the end of the fence, they still go around it. Our state is well behind other states that have mule deer crossings and wildlife crossings as far as what they have done. You want other states, and a lot of those have multiple overpasses for the wildlife, especially in Utah. Huge overpasses. You never know the highway was underneath them.
Yeah,
the elk use them.
Yeah, and I don't want to take us too far away from public comment, but we are working on that overcrossing in the Sisters to Black Butte Ranch corridor.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Online. So phone number 2224 *9 is the guidance for unmuting yourself. You've been promoted to join in.
Hello.
Hello. Thank you for joining us.
Okay, sorry I don't have a camera. My phone's too old and I'm also techno-tarded.
We got you
So,
online here though,
first
so
of
please
all-
introduce yourself and provide testimony.
Okay, just to let you know, it's not *9 to unmute, it's *6.
Oh my gosh, I was right. Yes.
All right, this
Sorry.
is Susie Hart. I live in the Tumalo area. My mailing address is P.O. Box 87 in Bend, 97709. And I'd like to start with mentioning the procedure for public notices so that people know about the input options. And I have testified to this twice at the Planning Commission, and they may not have the authority to change this, but apparently the notices are only put in the Bend Bulletin, which is a regular newspaper that is not what most people read anymore. I did call them and I gave this information to the Planning Commission, but I don't have it in front of me right now. The Bend Bulletin has a very limited subscriber, either in paper or online. And then because I called them and asked them, I also made a call to the source. They have a vastly wider readership. I asked them how they knew this if they don't get, they don't have subscribers. And they do an audit every year to find out how many people are reading their newspaper. So I would ask, I know it's not a traditional newspaper, but I would ask that these notices be put in the source, because I think there would be a lot more people finding out about these opportunities. So secondly, because I live in Tumalo, I've also been involved with the Tumalo Community Plan. And this roundabout that is now being proposed in the TSP for Cook where Cook and Klein Falls kind of become one, and at Tumalo Road, was only mentioned, was never discussed at the community meetings. There's been no community input regarding any changes to this intersection. And it is mentioned only in the introduction, I believe on page 2, as just kind of a passing comment. It's not even on page 25 where transportation is discussed. So, and furthermore, there are a lot of people that I've talked to that, because of their work schedule, cannot attend a morning meeting such as this one to give their input. But I would suggest that this go back to the Tumalo community for input. There's a lot of opposition to having a roundabout, since in the mission statement for the TCP, it states that the mission or the vision statement is to retain livability of Tumalo as a rural small town. Technically, it isn't even a town. So this would not be, this would not maintain Tumalo as a rural small town. It also says collaborating with surrounding rural area, and there was no collaboration about this. So I would ask that go back to the Tumalo community for collaboration. I would like to mention, I would like to see the board or the county, maybe if you can, be more proactive in getting CET to provide public transportation to reduce the amount of traffic on Cook and Klein Falls Road, and to make it more accessible to all. And it would also help reduce roadkill, because we are in the wildlife overlay zone that that the Forest Service was recommending. So, or fish and game, whatever it's called. And then lastly, I'm concerned about the speed, which was never mentioned on Klein Falls Road, because it is 10 miles an hour higher than the 4-lane divided highway, which is only 45. And when the county, I've lived there for almost 38 years, when the county put up the new road signs, because the old ones were very dilapidated, it said Klein Falls Road. And people generally did not go more than about 5 miles over the speed limit. Then they went through a couple of years later and put little stickers that match perfectly, that changed road to highway. And immediately people started going about 15 miles an hour. I have been about 3 times near miss in speeding cars, one of which was almost a T-bone, because a car behind me tried to pass both of us at the same time when there was a divided or when there was a double yellow line at an intersection on a curve, and I was trying to turn left and almost got T-boned. I've seen many near accidents when there's tractors and farm equipment on the road, bicycles, other cars, and then another car that wants to pass all of that. And so I'm more
Susie, I
concerned
want to
about the
thank you for the
safety on
testimony.
Pine Falls Road. Okay, so those are my points, and thank you for taking those into consideration. Thank you.
Okay. Yeah, thank you very much. Thanks for getting in on your phone today. So next is Randy Winlinks.
Guys, something to read at night.
Mm-hmm.
Go to bed.
Well, thank you. Whoa.
I heard we had about 10 people online. I don't know if it's obvious how many more with a hand, raised hand, maybe 2 or 3 more. And then we have about 10 or 12 more here too. So just giving people a perspective of where we're at here in the public testimony.
That's
What
was that? By the way, no, I haven't. They're too big. No worries. These are brand new. Brand new. hot off the press.
So we're generally trying to keep it to 3-minute testimony also.
What
And you
was
see it, 3-minute testimony generally is what we're trying to do here.
Copy. Just to answer the question, Scale House Road is a private road. My family owns it. We control it. So it's not public. I'll be as quickly as possible. I do agree with Matt Cyrus. My initial points is I believe the board should adopt the restriction of these multi-use paths that border or pass through the resource zones. I also propose that they ban these trails that are paths that basically border the current wildlife overlay zones or border those. And I do support their proposal of restricting the lava lands to Bend Trail entirely on the west side of Highway 97. ODOT had 3 versions of this. We had our meeting back in March 31st of 2022, I believe, with ODOT. They hadn't made a decision. They said they'd get back to us. As far as I know, they never made a specific decision of where they were going to put the path. They were evaluating both sides of the highway. And now we're finding out they're literally committed to go to the east side of the road. The one thing I want to make emphasis on, we're discussing FLAP money. Deschutes County requires on FLAP money, especially because we're connected to these Forest Service areas, and this federal money is used to improve these roads, such as bike trails and that type of thing. Every project that ODOT does that puts in for FLAP money is taken away from the county's ability to get that money. So that's something to consider. The other thing I want to emphasize is these multiple use trails in Deschutes County. We have weather, and a lot of times it starts snowing sometimes in October. So we have a 5-month window of using these trails. Lava Lands is only open for 5 months of the year. I will read this. Groups such as Central Oregon Land Watch, Backcountry Country Hunters, and Anglers, DLCD, ODF, and W, and others support the preservation of resource zones and the declining Central Oregon mule deer population. Multi-use recreational trails are the #1 factor fragmenting wildlife habitat. Declining mule deer populations can be directly linked to the existence of these trails within their habitat. These trails have a broad effect. Laterally, they can affect areas from 1,000 to 3,280 feet to one side or the other of the trails. That will take in all of my property and a good portion of my family's timber farm and displace what we provide as prime habitat for mule deer. And also the management of our timber, and that's our responsibility as we manage our property for timber, wildlife, and water. I do want to take some time to address ODOT, which is part of what I submitted. These trails are going to have a limited use or pass. They're not really trails. These are multiple use paths that's funded by the federal government through FLAP, sponsored by the Forest Service, and they're built by ODOT. So they're not specifically a highway project. So ODOT can't come in here and say this is like they're building a highway or widening a highway. This is a recreational path. They built the Lava Lands to Deschutes River Path, which they call the Sun Lava Path, which is entirely on Forest Service land. That was, again, financed by the feds, sponsored by the Forest Service, and ODOT built that trail, which has nothing to do with Highway 97.
Wrap up. It looks like you're ready to go, but I'm thinking we got to wrap up here.
Yeah, let me conclude. One thing I will mention in what ODOT's testimony is, they say there's zero impact of this trail being on the east side of the highway. And it's impacting 4 lots on the west side. Those 4 lots, Deschutes Riverwoods Country Store. One is a vacant lot used for parking. The other is the Morningstar Christian School, and there's 1 residence. On the east side, we have 6 private property lots. 2 are used for residential. The other 4 are used for the management of the commercial tree farm and the management of wildlife habitat. how can they overlook 6 compared to 4, where essentially the west side is a commercial operation as it is, and it would be a much better fit for that neighborhood.
Great.
Thank you, commissioners, for what you do and hearing me out.
Thank you.
Can I just ask Mr. Winlinks, you quoted, it sounded like a letter that said multi-use pathways are the primary factor fragmenting wildlife habitat. That doesn't jive with my understanding of habitat impacts around the state. Is that quoted from something that you just provided to us in writing here?
In the record, I submitted, I believe, 17 to 18 studies related to trails and paths and their impact on wildlife. And this is what I said: if you take a trail that has a lateral impact of up to 3,200 feet, that's 6,400 feet, and run that 2 or 3 miles.
I'm not arguing with you that there are impacts,
so-
but I'm just concerned that it sounded like there was an assertion that multi-use pathways are the primary impact on habitat across the state, and I don't think that that's an accurate statement.
It is accurate.
So I'd like to see I'd just like to see the quote in context.
Read the studies.
Okay.
There's a lot of studies on it, and this is relatively new. Most of these studies came out in the last 2 to 3 years. Some of them go back 5 years, and it's done by a broad base of groups.
No,
UCLA, Sierra Club.
I'm definitely familiar. I'm familiar with a lot of this research. In the Deschutes Collaborative Forest Project, we're advancing a core habitat defragmentation project right now. So very keenly aware of the impacts of roads and trails, but there are many other things that fragment habitat around our state. So I just wanted the context on that quote.
Yeah, the context is you look at how many trails.
You can just tell me where to look in this packet.
Reports.
Tell me specifically where that quote came from.
More now, and it's kind of unfashionable to admit this, because bicycles have become a special treatment in regards to people being out in the environment, and they're finding out that people
there are real impacts. There are real impacts.
Thank
Just
you very much
trying to
for your
get put it in proportional scale.
Okay, next online. Jana Johnson, and then John Schubert will be following here. So Jana Johnson, thank you for joining us. You need to unmute yourself.
All right. Hello, can you hear me?
Yes, we can. Thank you very much for joining us.
All righty. Thank you for having me. My name is Jana Johnson. I'm the executive director of the Deschutes Trails Coalition that is hosted here in Bend and serves Central Oregon. I'm just wanting to join the hearing just to reiterate some of the points that we sent in earlier. The Deschutes Trails Coalition, first of all, we're a coalition of about 35 different organizations and agencies that represent public lands, outdoor recreation, conservation, tourism, businesses, and trail user groups. So while we have trails in our title, we're really looking at things from a pretty comprehensive lens in terms of how trails relate to our community in those different capacities. The mission of the DTC is to work collaboratively to foster an exceptional regional trail system that's sustainably managed and balances the needs of people and nature. And I bring that up because a lot of those needs that we're balancing here have been brought up today that I think are very relevant to this process. We look at not only the physical aspects of trails, but also the social, how it's being experienced, the users that are served, et cetera. The economic impact of our trails, as well as environmental, which includes wildlife. So with these values and this approach in mind, the DTC would like to express support for the Transportation System Plan update to retain its ability to consider future trails and routes on all lands in the unincorporated county, including those resource lands. We recognize that there are social and natural resource considerations to evaluate as part of any trails project. The analysis inherent to the county's planning process is the appropriate means to evaluate individual proposed routes or trails, and that includes these considerations. The proposed exclusion of any recreational routes or trails without this proper analysis fails to meet the intent for how these lands are to be managed for multiple uses in a region of Oregon that is rapidly growing. So I think that the not taking a blanket approach to ban consideration is what we would support. Just a blanket ban does not allow for a process that is intended to play out. And to Emmy's point, there are ways that we can address the considerations that come up through that analysis that might end up with a better product all the way around that supports all these different elements that we're trying to support: wildlife, safety, mental and physical health, transportation issues, etc. So thank you again for your consideration, and we'll look forward to seeing what comes out of this next.
Thank you for joining us. So John Schubert.
Thank you very much. See which one's hot. Thanks. Well, thanks very much for having this opportunity for the public to present to you on this, I think, a very important matter. I'm a native of Corvallis, Oregon, and a resident of Deschutes County since 1987 upon completion of U.S. Peace Corps service overseas. During the past 36 years, at various times, I have served at the pleasure of the County Commission on the Deschutes County Bicycle Pedestrian Advisory Committee and the Joint City-County Bend Urban Area Planning Commission, as well as an elected member of the City Council in the past. As a volunteer, I was a founder of Biking for a Better Community, which we morphed into Commute Options for Central Oregon. My profession until retirement in 2015 was as a trail specialist with the Deschutes National Forest and Student Conservation Association across the country, and as a Forest Service consultant to the Great Baikal Trail in Siberia. In short, I urge you to endorse and move forward with construction of a bicycle pedestrian separated path between Bend and Lava Lands and Sisters to Black Butte. I'll let you guys work out where it goes, but it'd be great if we'd get there. As it happens, I was a relief fire lookout at Lava Butte, and I rode my bike from Northeast Bend to the top of Lava Butte throughout the summer one year. And so I know how important it was. Riding on the highway was no fun at all. And I did not own a car at that time. It was the only way I had to get to work to monitor fires from Lava Butte Lookout. Bend is a biking town. Sisters is a biking town. Black Butte Ranch is a cycling community. Sun River, of course, had some of the earliest separated paths in the country, even when Sun River began. So completing a paved path from Sun River to Lava Lands Visitor Center has exceeded expectations and has received tremendous use. I think it's essential that a body like this not be swayed by narrow, whether NIMBY or certain resource. I mean, it's obviously your task to balance all these matters and come up with the best solution. It's clear that there is great support for separated facilities like these. And I would say I personally have some concerns about a footbridge across from Brookswood over to the National Forest because of wildlife and erosion impacts. The Deschutes River Trail is already much loved and is causing significant problems for sedimentation and so I think it's more important to develop trails on both sides of the river. It's less important to have people able to easily cross over. The deer impacts, the erosion and sedimentation into the river are significant concerns. Yeah, that's it. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much for your testimony. And then online, Doreen Ty, thank you for joining us. Then David Green will be next. So Doreen, thank you for joining us. You may need to unmute.
Unmuted.
Great, thank you.
Hi, how you doing?
Very good.
All right, so belaboring airports again. In listening to comments, it's once again made clear that people in our community care deeply about pollutant loads, our outdoors and outdoor activity. Has the EPA or DEQ been involved in any discussions on transportation emissions impacts as these projects encroach on lived environments? Clean Air Act Section 176C 42 USC 7506C to ensure that federal funding and approval are given to highway and transit projects that are consistent with, conform to the air quality goals established by a state air quality implementation plan. Conformity to the purpose of the SIP means that transportation activities will not cause new air quality violations, worsen existing violations, or delay timely attainment of the national ambient air quality standards. DEQ states significant impact means an additional ambient air quality concentration. I've shared air monitoring reading which frequently exceed particulate standard allowances by more than 5 times. How much is from road and how much is from private aviation businesses served by road improvements? All are a result of the decisions made and approved by this elected body. The purpose of this county government includes a priority commitment to advocate for our community's liberty, health, safety, and resilience. Please protect our citizens. There are state and federal funds available to protect us. Please pursue those in our protection. More than 1,000 times increase the airport operations does not mention the surface traffic generated by this increase. These airport activity increases create substantial impact on road noise, TVOCs, benzene, lethal particulates, and add many users being frat house age and altitude with big trucks and modified mufflers with poor emissions, add construction vehicles and roundabouts. Make private businesses pay for impacts on our roads, health, and community. Protect our community from life-altering private businesses. Deschutes County must come into compliance with EPA emission requirements. No data does not equate no toxic pollution. When you put in roundabouts, widening road, and change traffic patterns, you change not only private property, our environment, enjoyment, liberties, and values, but our irreplaceable health. Deschutes County has ignored the road noise pollution for far too long. This TSP is no exception. Please implement EPA's clean air and public protection laws. Again, there are funds available. Pursue those and changes. Thank you.
Thank you very much for joining us. David Green.
Good morning. My name is David Green. I live in Bend and I'm a member of your Bicycle and Pedestrian Advisory Committee and testifying for myself. I'm urging you to support the draft transportation system plan as originally presented. People who drive cars don't realize how dangerous our roads are for anyone outside a vehicle. This means that none of us have any choice except to drive if we want to get around the county. For the last 100 years, all of our transportation decisions have assumed that everyone drives and everyone has access to a car. In reality, between 15 and 30% of adults don't drive. Many other people want the freedom to travel outside a car. Bicycle connections proposed in the draft TSP would give those people a chance to get from town to town and from town to places they want to go without using a car. Cars are expensive. It costs about $12,000 to own and drive a car. Over the life of a family, this amounts to about $500,000, $500,000. I've talked to many people who have been able to replace a second family vehicle or even go without a car because they've chosen to ride bicycles or buy an e-bike. The connections in the TSP will make that possible for more people and families, relieving substantial financial burdens. You might think it's a long way between our towns and no one would bike regularly between them. Yet e-bikes make biking those distances possible, and a few people are already doing that, even without the safety and convenience of a really nice route to do that. And remember that many people live between our towns, making those distances very much shorter and very reasonable for commuting by bike and especially by e-bike. That's especially true for teenagers who are less likely to have access to a car and need to develop independence of getting around by themselves. But to make any of that happen, we need very safe and convenient routes. People aren't going to ride next to the highways and county roads that we have today regularly between our cities and from our cities to places people want to go. And people want to go to the same places on bikes that they want to go in cars. Connections proposed in the draft TSP are a start to doing that and give local agencies a chance to compete for funds to build and plan those routes. So please approve the draft TSP with all the proposed connections and without the restriction on where they are. Thank you.
Thank you very much for your testimony and thank you for your service on BPAC and other BPAC members here also. I failed to say that earlier. So online. No more. Okay, we're getting there. So Matt Mucha. I wanted to say Munch.
It's harder than it actually is. Muchna. I'm Matt Muchna, the executive director of Envision Bend, and I'm here on behalf of Envision Bend, and just want to say thank you to the county commissioners for hearing this testimony, and thank you to the county staff for the open communication that we've had through the community's vision action planning process. I'll keep it brief. I think there's a lot of experts in the room, and I'm learning a lot from some of the specifics, but I think similar to the vision plan, which I presented to you all on November 8th, the need for interconnection and connection in our communities is there. What we heard from the community over our 17-month process, where we heard from 3,500 participants, 20% of surveys that we got were from outside the UGB, is that interconnection of trails is key importance. It's a safety, accessibility, as well as equity and recreation opportunity. So I'll just briefly read this strategy and ask for your support as we further work to align this community vision plan with large important documents like the TSP that can serve as a North Star for our community moving forward. So the interconnected regional trail system to complete develop of a comprehensive interconnected biking and pedestrian trail system in Deschutes County and beyond. Work with public and private partners to identify and acquire appropriate rights of way to construct trails, improving recreational access for underserved areas and populations, filling in the gaps in the system such as the Deschutes River footbridge, to connect Southern Bend neighborhoods to the west side of the river, and connecting the cities of Bend, Redmond, Sisters, Sun River, Lapine, and other Central Oregon communities. Link the countywide trail system with existing or proposed urban trails and pathways inside these same cities. And a part of our process was recommending organizations in the community to be partners. And we recommended the the County BPAC Commission, which I also serve on behalf of the Redmond BPAC Commission. And I'm a Redmond resident. And for me, as someone who commutes regularly to and from Redmond, I think these sorts of trail systems would provide safety and access for folks, especially north of Bend and south of Redmond to get into town to work and to the services available. So on behalf of Envision Bend and the Vision Action Plan, appreciate your continued work to align these efforts. And really the key piece is that it helps our partners listed in the plan attract funding and helps those agencies align in future opportunities. So thank you again, and appreciate the work on this.
Great, thank you. David Thompson, and then following will be Neil Ransgard. So two names in the room now.
Good afternoon, commissioners.
Well, it's afternoon.
Thank you for this opportunity to speak. My name is David Thompson. I am the chair of your Bicycle and Pedestrian Advisory Committee, and I'm here today speaking on their behalf. A lot has already been covered here. I think it's telling the number of people who are interested in this topic. I think it's interesting that the major concerns about the county's transportation systems plan going forward relate to multimodal transportation. And I'm hopeful that the commission representing the citizens of the county will adopt a forward-looking plan that we can look back on in 20 years and say, we did a lot of those things. We made things better. And if anything, we underestimated the need to provide transportation options other than an individual in a car. As our population continues to grow, which it undoubtedly will, there is really no chance that that's going to stop. We are going to have increasing traffic issues. We're going to have increasing greenhouse gas emission issues. We are going to have increasing inability of businesses to function as people can't get to work. They can't get goods to market. We've seen that happen in the Portland arena. And providing alternatives to using the public roadways is an excellent way to help mitigate that going forward. The plan states right up front that there's a no new roads policy, right? So we are not going to build our way out of more cars through building more roads. We just don't have the resources to do that. We don't have the land to do that. It would create lots of problems. Building a multimodal infrastructure, on the other hand, is a much less impactful, less expensive, and creating multiple benefits beyond just transportation in terms of health, in terms of low-income people being able to access their jobs, access services. So I just want to encourage the commission to adopt the plan as it is presented, and realize that there will be issues as we go to implement any of these projects, and we have processes in place to deal with those issues, which is happening now with the Lava Lands to Bend trail, right? I mean, there's a zoning process underway right now. There's been a lot of opportunity for public involvement, and there will be that for any of these as they move forward. And that is the targeted place to try and find the best compromise between the various issues that we face. So that's what
Question for you.
Yes.
Has the BPAC discussed anything about funding these things? Because a gallon of gas is the road tax and registration fees for vehicles. And this is a hot topic, obviously. But yeah, any discussion at BPAC?
Our discussion around funding is basically that as greenhouse gas reduction becomes a higher and higher priority at the federal and state level, we believe there's going to be more funding made available to projects that reduce that.
So from outside the area, not
from outside the area, yes. We don't believe the county is going to fund much, if any, of these projects, right? Just based on ability. However,
yeah, but something structurally would need to change to help fund any of this.
Yeah. Yes, we do. And, that obviously impacts both the state and the federal government as well. But we believe that reducing greenhouse emissions as it becomes a higher and higher priority, more funding will be targeted to that. That funding will become available for competitive projects, and having these connections in our plan will allow Deschutes County to be competitive in attracting that funding, which brings money, which brings jobs to build these these environments and help solve our transportation problems. So win-win.
Thank you.
I would also just say that we see plenty of examples from around our region right now of federal, state, and local funding becoming available for high priority projects. The paved pathway that's running along Highway 20 out of Bend towards Old Bend Rittman Highway. This one was an odd funding situation, but the paved pathway through the city of Lapine, so there are the undercrossing of Highway 20 in Tumalo.
You're in the mode of trying to tell me how to conclude thoughts right now, and I don't appreciate it.
Well, you asked a question.
Yeah, I know, but we're in a public testimony, and I mean, this is frustrating for me. I just want you to know. Okay, so thank you very much.
Thank you for your service, Dave, and your leadership.
So Neil Ransgard, and then following will be Cheryl Harley.
All right. Good afternoon, commissioners. For the record, my name is Neil Bonsgard, and I am the Transportation Policy Manager at the Environmental Center, as well as also serving on the Deschutes County Bicycle Pedestrian Advisory Committee. And I live at 1610 Northwest Hartford Avenue here in Bend. I'm here to address the draft TSP update currently under consideration. And like many others have mentioned, I'm emphasizing the importance of multi-use paths outlined in tables 5-6 and 5-7. Creating safe and accessible paths and accessible transportation is crucial for communities throughout our county. They don't just expand transportation option for non-drivers, but also promote safe and comfortable options for walking, biking, and other forms of active commuting and recreation. And I really think that that's kind of the heart of the issue. We want to open up options, and the TSP is supposed to be kind of a long-term planning and visionary opportunity to make those trips feel more comfortable for a broader portion of the population that don't feel comfortable there already. We believe that the TSP should be broadly supportive of these without specific restrictions on the paths, and recognizing that any individual project would still need to meet applicable regulation and have its own individual development process. As others have mentioned in both written and oral testimony, we respectfully urge you to promptly implement the multi-use paths detailed in these tables. I know that that's not actual putting them on the ground as in terms of funding, but not having the specific restrictions that were mentioned in amendment. And I also wanted to reiterate the concerns shared from the ODOT representative around the specific restriction from Bend to Lava Butte. This last minute restriction came as a surprise following the lengthy public process and alternative analysis. And I think as has been mentioned about the TSP being broad and being visionary, having a specific restriction on an individual project seems like the wrong place for that type of input. And it would could potentially hinder the practicality of that project. So in conclusion, investing in these multi-use paths brings a host of benefit, improving the quality of life, promoting sustainability, and boosting economic vitality. I implore you to not limit the county's potential in this visionary document. Thank you so much for your consideration.
Great, thank you so much. So Cheryl Harley and then Bob Nash.
Cheryl left.
Bob Nash. Thank you for sticking to the end with us.
Thank you very much. I'm Bob Nash. I'm a member of the Redmond Bicycle and Pedestrian Advisory Committee. I'm here today to speak in support of the TSP and specifically the multi-use paths. I believe they will enhance safety for motorists, pedestrians, cyclists. As has been cited many times today, they'll enhance the livability and connectivity of our communities and population. I believe that they will also continue Deschutes County's, renowned system of outdoor recreation. And then I would just like to finish by echoing two comments. First, that in the plan, the pathways are aspirational. They're not in concrete. They're not specific. They're not funded, as we've noted many times, but they're aspirational. And then, as was also noted, if specific projects move forward, issues can certainly be addressed, and all of the concerns by the stakeholders can be addressed. And so including the plan as written is not creating a roadblock in any way at all. And thank you very much.
Question for you, as a member of Redmond BPAC, is there any, what are the high priority vision items that you talk about for as a Redmond resident for BPAC?
Oh boy. We are kept abreast, thanks to, as Matt pointed out, he's a member of both. We're well abreast of the county BPAC. We're very supportive of the pathways that are included in the TSP. We want to do everything we can to help those. As Matt also mentioned, connectivity between Bend and Redmond is very important to us.
I'm thinking in the city of Redmond, is the development pattern conducive to bicycling? And then are there any community connectors that are kind of the high priority thing that you'd like to see?
Within the city of Redmond?
Yeah.
Well, we are currently working on trying to map. We're a little behind Bend in terms of, mapping bikeways and pedestrian ways. We're trying to catch up. We're trying to, put together the data and come up with stress levels. We're in the process of doing that. And then, like I say, outside of the city of Redmond, just general connectivity to other areas.
Great. That's what I was looking for. Thank you so much. And Royce Kilrood.
Hello, and I want to thank you first for your time. I am Royce Callerid. I live in Southwest Bend. I am on the board of Connect Bend and the very part-time executive director for them, though more full-time after the length of today's meeting. So yesterday we submitted written testimony asking for the inclusion of the South UGB Footbridge project in the TSP as a named project. We did that because the TSP guides decision-making. And so that is in the record. Today, though, the main thing I want to do is respond to Commissioner Chang's question about public support. Mr. Rawlings will get exact numbers, but roughly here's what I've seen. Submitted to the Planning Commission about 45 and counting letters in support. I have seen none opposed. Before today, and this is less accurate probably, one person making oral comment opposed. After today, and including me, 2 opposed and 3 in favor. So that's where we are. I thought that might be helpful.
South Bridge.
What?
The bridge?
South UGB Footbridge, yes, specifically for that project. So there were 45 letters at least in support and counting. I also want to add a brief comment as a citizen. This project has overwhelming public support. And I think there's a simple reason, and that's that it's really too good to be true. And what I mean by that, I'll just name a couple things. First off, it gets bikes and cars off Reed Market Road. This is a choke point. The second thing that I really want to zero in on is we've talked about a lot of these projects being aspirational. This really isn't aspirational. It's funded by BPRD, and that's a credible funding source. If, the bike ped issues are, my bread and butter, I love them. I want to support them. If we don't go for the low-hanging fruit, if we don't go to projects that are funded, that have great sort of off-the-charts connectivity, we're not going to make progress on these issues. So that's it, and thank you.
Great. Thanks for sticking with us to the end of this. So that was it for the request to speak. Is there anybody else in the room on this matter? Is there anybody else online? So seeing none, I propose that we close the oral portion of this, and maybe I don't know if we want to leave a written record open or not, kind of up to us at this point.
There may be somebody out there that we did hear from Ms. Hart, who said, sometimes our communication using the bulletin isn't really working. Maybe we really need to reevaluate what we're doing. And so I would say it might, leave it open for another week.
I'd be fine with that. I do, since so many people did show up today to testify on this issue, I think it would be helpful to give them a sense of an indication of what we think about these issues, how we think we might resolve some of the concerns. I would put forward a proposal that we actually modify the way that this section is dealt with in the TSP. I think we don't for the county, we don't need to assign priorities to these projects. We're not trying to come up with the money. We're not trying to construct them. Doesn't matter to us whether they happen in the next 5 years or 15 years from now, within the 20-year time frame. So I would propose that we keep the projects that are in the current TSP, the paved pathway projects, that we take away the priority ratings, that we do not indicate any preferences on alignments or configurations, and that we encourage all of the key stakeholders involved in these projects to work together to try to resolve and balance these multiple needs of access and mobility, habitat protection, not impacting land uses on resource zone lands.
So I'll give you some thought. Well, so let's confirm. So the oral portion of the hearing is closed, and then we'll extend a written record for a week, just if there's anybody that wants to, write anything down again. And then we'll schedule this for deliberations, the final deliberations. It sounds like before the end of the year,
That's what it would work out.
Yeah. So just that's kind of the business case. And then some thoughts about when I was on the Park and Recreation District Board before I even became a commissioner. I remember coming to the conclusion, and we need paths north, south, east, and west out of the town. It was before it was incorporated, the city of La Pine. So I was on the park board. As a horse owner, I've always figured, man, I want to just jump on my horse and go somewhere someday. You could just about do it in some of the rural areas, and it's gotten a lot busier in the last 15 years. So it's less, but we still have people ride in our neighborhoods on horses. So multi-use paths, I think of that as opportunities for anybody and everybody. So as I say, I don't start off by saying, no, we don't want paths anywhere. Interesting though, this is a transportation system plan, $200 million proposed projects in here. And we got kind of wrapped up on this one little aspect of it, referring to, the idea of trails out there. And it's serious business. I'm not discounting it. But this, the TSP is a lot of other pieces. I think it's a very good professional product for what we need to do on the existing system with the resources we have, talking about bridges, intersections, and safety improvements. So as I say, that's the TSP plus this trails conversation. So as I say, I'd be open to, so maybe some more generic words about it. I haven't gotten down to what we're looking at, but yeah, let's maybe propose some things and, get to deliberations in the next few weeks. As I say, a written record will be open for a week now. Thoughts?
Till Friday, next Friday?
Today's Wednesday.
I know. I'm just saying.
So you want to be more than a week? No, I'd rather
I'm just saying, keep it, okay. Do we usually close on Wednesdays?
5 o'clock would be good,
Okay, Tarek is,
The 4 p.m. cutoff, just
4 o'clock, sorry. Yep. Okay.
but certainly
Yeah.
whatever date.
4 o'clock.
okay, 4 o'clock next Wednesday.
Any other thoughts, Commissioner?
Well, I understand what you're saying about riding a horse, because that's why I moved here, is to ride my horse. And, we have some of the best trails in the world. Nobody was really talking about it today. We were hearing a lot about bikes, but I want to go through this information. Honestly, I worry about like the Pal Butte interchange with 126 and those kind of traffic issues that we do have in the county. And I'm glad that some of them have moved to the top. And yet, it is $189 million. So what is it we can do? But I want to go back through the information. I really appreciate all the testimony today. And if you were unable to testify, please do submit written comments, because I think it's important to hear from our community thinking ahead, and also knowing that depending on the year, how much winter we have, I think that's always could be impactful here. And hopefully we're going to get some snow soon.
Great. So yes, do you need anything else?
I was just maybe clarifying for the record that next Wednesday's date is December 6th, at 4 p.m. And I think just a little bit of housekeeping next steps, we'll likely come back with a list of topics that have been public comments, a robust number of comments, and then maybe from that list, we may ask the board to identify sort of the top areas that they'd like to see reflected in a decision matrix.
Yep. Okay. And then, yeah, as I say, it's, if there's ideas, you mentioned specifics, Commissioner Chang, if that could be written up possibly and shared as a proposed page or, however, whatever you're referring to, but maybe before the deliberations, if there's something could be put on paper is my thought.
Tarek, if it's possible, I always appreciate if we have 75 comments for and 25 against. It's always nice to see those, how many people were engaged.
Sure, and I will give a large disclaimer with that approach in that I will tally things up for you. There are people that have commented multiple.
3 times for.
Not an accurate count as a vote or a tallies, but I will gladly tally those numbers up for you.
Thank you.
So what I said, I believe will be reflected in the meeting notes. Did you want something beyond that?
Well, as I say, I mean, what you said sounded like a substantive change to a specific table. And if that could be created before we deliberate as a proposal, then it could be received and acted upon. That was my thought.
Could staff do that for us?
Sure, we don't
Basically-
necessarily need that in writing. It's certainly.
Yeah.
Take the third column off that table.
Well, there you go. That's what it would be then.
Yeah, thank you, Commissioner.
I do want to make one comment. It's a bit relevant. Someone I know is driving for ODOT now, and he actually told me in 5 weeks, he's had to pick up probably 30 animals that have been killed. And I was given the number by ODOT after asking several times that they approximate 600 animals a year. But if this one driver is picking up 30 in 5 weeks, I'm really wondering. I know on my way to town, I know approximately where the deer are crossing. And it was just like this morning, there they were. And they were like, people have got to really slow down and be more aware. And I'd suggested that when the elk are out off of Highway 20 and 126, if we could have some kind of flashing lights to remind our visitors that they need to slow down, that there's a herd of 200 elk right by the road. And, in fact, it happened to Nick when he was coming back from Sisters, a month and a half ago. And I said, "Oh, Nick, be careful. There's a herd of elk out there." And the car right ahead of him hit an elk. And, it's such a simple thing, but if we could just have, I'm hoping ODOT would listen and somebody would put, warning sign, we've got a herd, please slow down, because you never know when they're going to cross.
And just reminders to people of when key migration seasons are, which right now is.
Okay, so that's it for this topic here. Thank you very much for joining us, everyone. At this time, other items, just a few more items maybe to be mentioned. I'd like to start off by saying happy anniversary to my parents, 59 years yesterday. So thank you for listening to that. But 59 years to Bob and Judy DeBone. So I wanted to get on the record.
That's great.
Yeah.
Okay.
Anything else though? Other items?
Are we good? Did I bring it up about the federal courthouse last week? I can't remember.
No, I don't think you did, but
Okay, the federal court system, 9,000 square feet isn't enough for them, but they're going to let us know by the first to the middle of January if 2 floors would be adequate to serve the federal court system. And from what I'm hearing from a lot of legal people in our community, it would really be important if they could pull it off. So, well, no,
Ongoing discussion.
yeah, in January.
Okay, well, with that, meeting adjourned.
Did you hear that enough, Brenda? Or was I too soft?